I apologize for the late start, but it took a little longer than we thought it would. And with that, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and the next thing on our agenda is the oath of office. We had an election, as you may know, and 2 of our board members were reelected to their positions. And Superintendent Thiele is going to administer the oath of office to Director Moraldo and Director Mulling.
This is always fun. I'm going to start tonight with Director Moraldo. So if you could please stand and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Marnie Moraldo, having been duly elected to the office of Issaquah School District number 411, Director District 2, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability, and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the United States of Washington. Sorry, I threw you on that. And that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America. Congratulations. Director Mullings. I, Sidney Mullings, having been duly elected to the office of Issaquah School District number 411, Director District 4, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability, and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington and of the United States of America. Congratulations.
No, it's not. So welcome back to both of you. I am glad to have our board intact. Next on the agenda is the annual board reorganization. So once we have a November election, at the following board meeting, we take this opportunity to elect a new president and, when appropriate, a new ledge rep, but this is not a ledge rep year. So I am just going to read this. In accordance with state law and consistent with board policy, the board must elect a board president annually or upon seating of new board members. Upon adoption of policy governance, the board eliminated the position of vice president. The superintendent will preside over the election process until a board president for the coming year is elected. Superintendent Thiele will declare the nominations for board president open. Nominations need not be seconded if repeated by the chair and may be closed by consensus or by a majority vote on motion or closure. By roll call vote, a president shall be elected by a majority vote and will immediately assume the gavel. So on one of these rare occasions where I give up control, I will turn the meeting over to Superintendent Thiele.
Thank you, President Weaver. But before I jump into my official duties, we want to acknowledge your outstanding work this past year with our commemorative gavel. I believe this is maybe your third one that you have. And
a small collection.
Wanted to thank you as well for serving as our board president during what turned out to be a pretty challenging year last year. You moved us from fully remote meetings to hybrid meetings and learned all the technology and everything we had to do along the way. And I can say personally, but I know I'm speaking for the rest of the board and the community, we thank you for your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I do have an official duty to do, and I know I often joke that this is a rare moment where I have absolute power, but it's for a very, very short time, and I will proceed with the task at hand. At this time, I would like to ask for nominations for board president. And I have to do this 3 times, so I just, okay, Director Weaver.
I would like to nominate Ann Moore.
So Director Moore has been nominated for president. Are there any other nominations for president? And for my 3rd time, are there any other nominations for board president? Seeing none, I will close the nominations. Now, this will be a roll call vote. So I will go from the far end of the dais this way and ask for your vote. So Director Gallinger, how will you vote?
I vote for Ann Moore.
Thank you. Director Moraldo, how do you vote?
Ann Moore.
Thank you. Director Mullings.
Ann Moore.
Director Moore.
I guess Ann Moore. Sounds weird, but.
I have to do it. I have to ask all of you, and Director Weaver.
Ann Moore.
Okay, it has been decided, and congratulations, Director Moore. You are the new Issaquah Board President. And just that quickly, I have to hand the meeting back over to the Board President, and that would be Director Moore, but I believe we're going to do a little bit of seat rotating
I think
here.
Ann and I are just going to swap,
Okay,
unless
if that's a
somebody else
decision
wants
you've all
to,
made, yeah.
somebody else wants to move forward. I will leave the gavel here. I will take.
We're just gonna yeah. So then the first thing you just want to make sure that Marty wants to continue because you're far end. That's all. No vote is required.
All right, I will go ahead and gavel us back into our meeting. And before I start, I'll get to this. I also want to thank Suzanne for being our president for the past year. The board absolutely appreciates her leadership as she stewarded us through a year of tremendous change, similar to what Marnie did in the year before. So we appreciate both of you. And I can only hope that this year is much easier. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working for. All right, so thank you very much. And then our last part on this is, Marnie, would you still like to be the board's FRN representative?
Yes, I would.
Okay, good. Then we will record that, and that one's set. Okay, I'll hand that back to you. We are now at the point of doing student input, and we have 2 students. We have Ashley Kirshner, if I'm saying that correct, and Tate Hayden, and they are both seniors at Liberty High School. So if we can let them turn on their video and microphones, we will let our two students give us student input.
Okay, I can go first.
Oh,
Tate.
there we go. Oh, perfect. Now we can see you bigger. That's what we're all referring to.
Yeah,
So
sorry. I'm
yes,
actually
go
at
ahead
work,
and
so I can't turn my
start,
video on.
Ashley.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first
Let's see
question we chose to talk about was what makes you feel.
Hold on 1 second. We're getting our volume up so we can hear you. Go ahead and speak again.
Okay. The first question that we talked about was what's happening at your school that's pushed you outside your comfort zone or helped you grow as a person. And overall, just coming back to school this year has forced a lot of our student body just to step outside their comfort zone after being stuck in their rooms and online school. It was just easy to kind of slide into like what you're used to and hide behind Zoom. But coming back has been a little bit different. I think there's a little bit of a staff to student disconnect, just in that the teachers especially kind of came back and
She's in high school.
came back and expected us a little bit to just jump in and know everything that we were expected to learn last year and just had high expectations. So coming back into classes was a little bit challenging just to get back into the routine of what school is like in person. As an ASB class, an ASB member, we went to a training this fall with a man called Scott Bakovich, and he helped us to understand that we need to give more to our student body than ask. And we've been working on that through simple little things like we're giving hot chocolate out at lunches next week, just to build more connection and help our student body and everyone just grow together outside of this hard time.
All right, thank you very much for that. I'm so glad that we have all of you students back in school, and I know it's an adjustment, but it's wonderful to have you back in class. And then do we have Tate?
Yes, I'm here. So I'm at work. I can't turn my camera on. I'm at work right now. But the other question we chose to take on was one thing that we found both challenging and rewarding. And the thing that we think is both challenging and rewarding for our student body currently is the forced interaction that being back in person school has caused. This forced interaction has been a giant change from being a whole year where every time we want to interact with someone that's out of our immediate family, it's an actual choice. We are not forced to leave our house really for anything. Now, 5 days a week, we are forced to leave our house and see like just about 1,000 other people that we don't know. And then we have like even these interactions, eye context, like that just kind of make it you feel like push out of your comfort zone. It feels not normal and it makes you kind of feel odd when you've been away for it so long. And so we think that we found it both challenging to get back to that normalcy of having the interaction every day, because it's been so different, it's been so distant for so long, but also really rewarding because it humanizes us, it makes us feel good, and just kind of warms us up.
Good, thank you for that input. You're both welcome to stay a part of the meeting for as long as you can. If at any stage you do want to give any input, go ahead and like turn on your video, because then you would pop up, or raise your hand and that would let you pop up so that we can call on you. So we have to be able to see you. So thank you very much for that. And then let us know if you have any other participation as we go along. All right. We are now moving into public input. Public input is an opportunity for folks to come up at this stage and give input to the board on items that are not on the agenda. This is not a dialogue with the board, but an opportunity for us to hear from you. We ask that you keep your comments civil and directed at the board, and each person is limited to 2 minutes. We ask that you start by stating your name clearly and the attendance area you live in, or what area you are from. And so we will start. The first person is Mark Burrows. Will you walk up to the microphone, and if it's not already on, Nancy can help get it on. And again, state your name and your attendance area, and then public comment is limited to 2 minutes.
Right. So my name is Mark Burles. I live in the Issaquah Highlands. I've had 3 daughters. PCMS, the youngest is a junior at Issaquah High School now. I came here to speak in support of Doug Crandall. I understand there's something going on. His status as high school coach of Issaquah girls has been, I'm not sure what the status is right now, other than he's not actively coaching. So I understand there's also an investigation going on. Obviously, if their complaint has been filed, the investigation needs to proceed. What I ask is that should that investigation, should his name be cleared, he is allowed to be reinstated in a timely fashion. My main point about Coach Crandall is I've observed this Issaquah Girls program for a number of years. Some of you know that I've been coaching kids for many years now. And what I see from Coach Crandall and the program and culture that he's building is really special. There's a sense of support. There's a safe environment for these young women to grow and develop and take chances. This is really fulfilling the true promise of athletics for young people. And this is unusual. It's special. And it would be a shame for this community and this group of girls to lose the opportunity to have him. He is an amazing coach, and I just wanted to be here and support him. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Hey, folks, I know we've had more clapping tonight because we've had some good things happen up here on the board, but traditionally we don't have the audience clap while we have public comment. If you'd like to raise your hands and do this to show your support for whatever it said, that would be just fine. Thank you very much. Next up on our public input list is George Sick. Thank you. I wasn't quite sure how to say that.
I'm George Sachin. I live in the Issaquah Highlands. And with the election just behind us, I was thinking about 2 years ago, many of you ran for the board. You probably could not have imagined what the next 2 years was going to be like. And it was, I think, traumatic for everyone. But 2 years later, I see things getting much better and looking much brighter. And I just wanted to take a moment to say, first, thank you to the teachers and the workers at the schools that kept things going. And thank you to you. I think a lot of times we focus on what doesn't work or what could be better. And we always should be looking at what could be better. But one of the things I looked into was this school district is still one of the top districts in the state and actually top districts in the country. So for all the things you have to work on and all the things that we could do better, this is still one of the best school districts in the country. And thank you.
Thank you for that input. Appreciate it. And then next up and last on my list is Gavin Dillon. And then actually for those that are on Zoom after this, I'll ask if there's anybody from Zoom that raises their hand because I can't see it right now and I'm not in Zoom. So you'll have to show me if there is. Okay, thank you. So Gavin.
Good evening. Gavin Dillon. I live in Issaquah, 3 kids matriculated or matriculating through the Issaquah School District, one who's a senior in high school at Issaquah. Thank you for allowing me this time. I am here tonight representing the Issaquah High School girls basketball community, many of whom are in the seats over here to my left. And the reason we are here tonight is because our girls are hurting. And we are hoping that this board can maybe help us relieve some of that pain and ease some of that hurting for the girls. I'll just briefly mention, and Mark alluded to this, on Monday, the district made a decision to suspend Doug Crandall, who's the head of the program. The girls, right before practice, found out that he would no longer be able to see them. He needed to leave the grounds, and he wasn't going to be their coach indefinitely. As you can imagine, a lot of confusion, a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, not knowing what was going on. A lot of tough questions for us as parents that night that we didn't have answers to. Having said that, I think there's a way we can ease some of that pain and suffering for the community. Number one, hoping we can remove some of the uncertainty around the process. We certainly recognize this is a personnel matter and an investigation needs to happen. We're not looking for answers to any questions around those matters. But just understanding the process, whether that's the investigation, the timeline, how long these things typically last, would be great for the girls so that they know there is an endpoint out there for them potentially. So that's one. Number two, we're hoping that we can give this community a voice in the process. We have a lot of parents, a lot of girls that have played for or are playing for Coach Crandall, and they look up to him, admire him, and
Your time is up, so I'll ask you to finish your sentence.
okay. So if there's some way for us to learn how we can be a part of that process and share our voice and feedback and the overwhelmingly positive experiences we've had with Coach Crandall, that would be
Thank you.
greatly appreciated.
We'll take that into consideration. As you stated too, personnel matters are not something we're going to discuss here. All right. So is there anybody on Zoom that would like to give public input on items that are not on our agenda? There is nobody? Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Excellent. All right. So now we're going to move on to approval of the consent agenda. A consent agenda is a meeting management tool. All board members have reviewed all the items on the consent agenda, and any board member can pull an item off of the consent agenda. Is there anything that needs to be pulled?
I'd like to pull off the item regarding, I'm sorry, should have had the name of it here. The 12/9/2021 certificated CT resignations.
All right. So that item will be pulled off. I think because what we've noticed is that there's a date that's incorrect and we would like to fix it. I think we can just leave this item until like after student representative, and we can do it towards the end and take care of that item. So I've made a note to add that item then. And then if there's nothing else needing to be pulled, then I will take a motion.
Okay, I move the consent agenda be approved as, has it been amended?
No,
Okay, as presented. Well, you pulled something. Is it presented or amended?
Can be amended.
Okay, I move the consent agenda be approved as amended.
Second.
all right. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. So that is approved, and we'll have that one item to deal with a little bit later. And now we are at establishment of our regular agenda. Are there any changes to the regular agenda?
Yes, President Moore, actually, there is an item that we would like to add to the regular agenda. We would like to add our recently ratified SEIU agreement with our paraprofessionals.
All right. Same thing there. How about if we get through the work that's on the agenda and then add it after we do the student reps?
I'm
Because
here, the pleasure of the president.
we don't need anybody in particular that would otherwise wouldn't be here, right?
Right, no.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. Maybe,
I think my preference would be that it's done
Early.
earlier. Like I would request that it's the item, replace item 3 after report outs.
I don't have any problem if you want to just take care of it there. Okay,
there'll definitely be more people paying attention if we do it earlier in the meeting, I think.
and we can take care of both items then if we don't mind moving out. Okay. Okay. All right. All right, so we'll do both of those after the report outs. So now we're on the first item of the regular agenda, which is a report out on the board's town hall meeting. We held a town hall meeting on November 30th at the Liberty. Oh, I did.
They did. Okay.
Well, but thank you for keeping me on track.
We're
If I
just-
didn't, we want to make
It's a
sure.
little confusing up
I
here
know.
tonight.
We've
Just
had a
wanted
lot
to
of
make sure.
change.
Thank you.
No, I think we're good on that because we were on the regular agenda and we're pulling, or we're adding the one item.
Yeah.
Okay. So the town hall was held at the Liberty High School auditorium. We had about a dozen community members that came and asked questions. I thought it was a good process. I hadn't been at the first town hall meeting, so this was my first one to be a part of. I thought the Menti worked well. I know we did it a little bit different because there were fewer people, and we put all the questions up and then just kind of step through one at a time instead of ranking them. I don't know. I'll take other feedback on what people thought about the town hall. Anybody, Suzanne?
You know, I enjoy interacting with the public. I like having question and answers. The fact that there were only 12 people there, somebody's going to probably say, well, 12 is a lot. But, you know, at that rate, it's going to take us 1,500 town halls to get through all of the people that live in the district. I realize they don't all want to attend, but I would like to do more things like this, but I would like to figure out a way to get more attendance, because I just feel like it's a lot of work and energy for a lot of people to kind of have a talk with 12 people.
I love the town halls. So I think they're great. I think they work well. I believe that the questions were fruitful enough and wide ranging enough that I wasn't as maybe concerned about the number of people in attendance. I think we certainly have an opportunity to decide or to work on what we think about having people either submit questions ahead of time or remote participation. I guess I would prefer submitting questions ahead of time. But I think part of what we're working out, what I like about it is having a steady drumbeat of when people can connect and hear what we actually think about these topics, and not just the less than satisfying, we just gave public input, no one talks to me, sense of coming to the board meeting. So I would like to keep doing them. I think probably more often than quarterly would be too much. And my hope would be if we could, because they become more regular, people get more used to participating and get more used to wanting to join them. I think it could be easy to say, hey, not a lot of people come, so not a lot of people care, and not a lot of people have questions for us. I just don't think that's the case. I think part of it is just helping people get to a direct and productive place to bring their questions, which I think the town halls are.
Yeah, and I want to just say, to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that we not do them. I also like it. I like interacting, and I'm not sure how many people were watching on YouTube. So maybe that's a piece of information we should have. I do like it. I just wish there were more than 12 people.
I don't know how many were watching at the time, but I just looked and it's been viewed 183 times, or at least it's been pulled up and started to be watched. I don't know, staff could eventually get us, YouTube does give you analytics about every single video to know how long. That would be interesting. We don't have access to that. Staff would have access to that. I think that having a remote option for people is going to be vital. I think that while our children struggled with remote learning, a lot of adults became much more productive at home. And we have learned that it saves us 30 minutes each way in traveling. So it's not even about not feeling comfortable to be in person. I think it really is how much time getting out of my house, having to put on shoes and getting out of stretchy pants. I mean, there's a variety of reasons why it is much easier to do things at home. If I have to stop and address something with my student doing homework, I can still do that and participate in the meeting. You can't do that when you come here in person. So I think that making a remote option not only available, but workable and engaging, I think we can still do that. So I think quarterly would be interesting. It would be really, we've heard from people, they get frustrated with what public input is. It's input, not output. And so and you hear that across the nation. That is why I think things have gotten so heated in a lot of the school board meetings, is because it feels so one way. And that's not what the anticipation of the public. It's like, I need to have a conversation about this. I also think we need to do some focused work on what is critical race theory. What is our definition of our cultural competency education that we are providing both our staff and working with students? What are we doing? Because monsters live in the dark. And I think as long as we don't really openly talk about those things, we can't dissuade people. The monster that they think is there is probably not in our schools. And if we were to find that it is, how would we deal with that? So I think those are questions that they need to hear from us. And until, we haven't had as much conversation in our district about critical race theory. But I think one way to really help people is to acknowledge, we're not just going to say, oh, we don't teach it and walk away. There's a concern there, and how do we address what the real concern is?
I like the idea of doing it quarterly. I think that if we want to do one that's remote, that would be fine. I would not advocate for us doing a hybrid model because I think that potentially the remote audience may overwhelm the people in the room. And I think that would just be disrespectful to people who've taken the effort to, as you described, to get there. So I think there's room for both. I think that we have been very purposeful over this. The year we were truly closed, and then this year to be really open to hearing feedback. And I think the two town halls were 60 days apart. And it's very interesting how distinctly different the feel in the room was, as well as the line of questioning. So I think that gives me much greater desire to, based on what Sydney said, is like if we have them more frequently, I think we get really different flavors based on sort of what's going on. But I think it does give us a good sense of the pulse of the district, or at least a pulse of who's there, because there are common themes and there are things that are just different based on the context. For like the concern about opening schools and then not believing that we were going to keep our schools open in the September town hall, that wasn't there in November because we kept the schools
We
open.
already showed them. We kept schools open.
So I think that's really helpful to see and to see the apprehension, so that the superintendent and his team would know, like, here's what the concern is, what people are worried about, and they've been able to deliver that. I think that's been a really huge message to our parents and community.
Right.
So I think they're helpful, and I think quarterly would be good. And I think getting a remote option would be absolutely a reasonable way to
Well,
sort of do that.
with the three kind of feeder patterns, you could do one in each of the feeder patterns and do a remote one and have 4 over the course of the year, which is sort of quarterly. Although the school year is less than a whole year, but that would kind of hit those things. Sydney?
I think it is interesting how different it was. And it was, I think, very timely when we had that meeting and the number of concerns we had around school safety, given some of the news that had broken earlier that day in Michigan. And so I do think it was really valuable to have that connection point to talk about, frankly, the robust programs that we do have in the district around school safety. And so I think there is something incredibly satisfying about being able to hear those questions and answer those questions, given the heightened anxiety that day and all the time, unfortunately. And so I do think there is maybe something around like current pulse questions that could be very interesting. I think we've had a couple of more maybe controversial topics that have been on the national stage, but that one really stuck out to me that day, that people really wanted to understand what were we doing in their schools today around school safety.
I really liked that, the first question I think that was answered was the superintendent, like qualities that we're looking for in a superintendent. And I thought it was a really unique opportunity for the 5 of us to individually share what we're looking for. And everything we do is in public. So it's not like we've had any even side conversations about this. So I think for future people who may apply to our district, they also immediately can get a sense on just sort of a feel for who we are, how we interact, and what our priorities are. And I think that was immensely helpful that I hadn't thought about, and not why we set up the town hall.
And
Oh, you're
and
right.
related to that, of course, we were able to record that and then push it out in the e-news as well. So now anybody who wants to go and see what you all had to say about that very important topic can just go and observe it, whether they were at the town hall or not. So it provided a very just-in-time kind of response to 2 important issues that the board has in front of them.
Yeah, so at some point, it'll probably be a time for us to figure out when we want to do another one, right? Do we want to do another one in the Skyline attendance area? And what would be a good timing for that? So that's something we'll need to ponder.
Yeah, I mean, we have 3 elementary teacher listening sessions in this next quarter,
I
as
know.
well as all of our SIP meetings and
It's very,
superintendent search.
we have a
So
lot. I know, it may have to be something, and maybe it's for the best because some of it got started at the beginning of the year because of the whole back to school, and that's all settled down. So, maybe doing a town hall later in the year out in the Skyline attendance area would be appropriate. So we'll just have to keep that on our radar that we'll want to get that cued in at some point. Okay.
Well, I think too, that with as a part of the superintendent search, we will be doing a lot of focus groups with stakeholder groups. And we did do the thought exchange already, but depending on what search firm we go with, they may have their own survey that they suggest we put out. So I think there will be a lot of other opportunities for the community to engage with us, not necessarily in a Q&A format, but definitely to make their wishes and thoughts known. So this is going to be the year for community engagement.
It certainly will, but I also think if this is something that we want to start doing, we do have to be very intentional about making sure we get it in so that we're hitting all areas of the district. So I would like to make sure we do one through the Skyline feeder, or although people can come to any of them, to be clear, but it does make it more convenient when it's in your feeder pattern and near you. And so I'd like to see it have one up at that Skyline area before the end of the school year would be our goal. Okay, we'll work on that. All right. Unless there's anything else on that one. Okay, we will move on. Next up is a report out on our WASDA annual conference. This is the WASDA, being Washington State School Directors Association, which is the association our board members are a part of. The board, our superintendent, we had 4 students and a chaperone attending with the students. We all attended the conference. It was in Bellevue, November 18th to the 20th. And so this will give us a chance to each kind of share something that you learned, attended during the conference. I was going to share, I attended the law conference. Suzanne attended as well. I've done this over several years now. I find it quite fascinating to hear about the legal challenges that are out there for school districts, and learn about cases, some that just yesterday went before the Supreme Court, and they had shared about the case and the amicus briefs and such that NSBA, the national organization, submits related to some of these items. Talked about cases relating to student free speech and discipline on campus, off campus. And so it's really quite interesting. There were also a panel from the Washington Risk Management Pool, because they had they had somebody from the risk management pool talking about how during COVID, they pulled together this attorney pool that its member districts could reach out to get very timely information on how to handle the response to COVID and the pandemic. And the 2 people speaking were Carlos Chavez and Charles Leach, who are 2 attorneys we know. And so it was interesting to hear them share about all the, the different kinds of challenges they were addressing, of which many of them were ones we were addressing in our district as well. And so it was good to hear from them, and the proactiveness of the risk management pool to provide that resource to its districts. I hadn't known about it before, but we came back and asked, and sure enough, we had been taking advantage of questioning them as well and getting information and feedback on how we perceive the thing. So I thought the law conference was very valuable. So if anybody else would like to share any parts of their experience at the conference, Suzanne?
Well, I wanted to piggyback on your comments about the law conference, because my takeaway of what was really interesting on that is that we're seeing a significant shift in the courts right now. I mean, you're obviously seeing it in the thing that just went to the Supreme Court on whether or not state education funding can go to religious schools. But the other case that they spent a lot of time talking about and I can never pronounce it, the Mahanoy Area School District, but the Supreme Court is struggling with this issue of, well, they're struggling with social media, basically, free speech versus if it's not in school, if it's off campus, but it affects campus. And there was another court case, and I don't remember what it was called, where they created that nexus rule that it has to somehow impact the school day, and then the school district can still do discipline. And they're kind of rethinking that. And they're kind of going back to maybe free speech is more important. So it was just interesting to listen to all of this, and it was very, very timely. The other thing that I wanted to throw out, because I thought it was fabulous, they didn't have as many sessions. This time it was somewhat of a truncated session. It only went 2 days. It usually goes 2.5. The first day was all about keynotes and awards and speeches. And then the second day was all classes. I went to one that I thought was absolutely fabulous, which was Susan Enfield and Highline talking about race and identity. Marnie, you were there, and I know Ron was there. I don't know if anybody else was. It was really, really interesting. They are doing something in Highline where every student in every grade receives some sort of instruction on race and identity. And they are taking equity conversations to a whole other level in Highline. And it's not without detractors, and there've been some bumps and some whatever, but I think it's fabulous, groundbreaking work that they're doing there. And it was just really interesting to hear their superintendent talk about that.
Anybody else? Ron, do you have anything you'd like to add?
It was an interesting format, but I kudos to WASDA for making the effort to have an in-person hybrid conference. As a in-person attendee, I much appreciated that opportunity after the fully remote conference last year. I happen to be one of those learners who learns much better in person. On the first day, I did enjoy hearing from Brooke Brown, the Washington Teacher of the Year out of the Franklin Pierce School District. I found her to be a compelling individual as an educator. I too liked the Leading with Racial Equity session. I thought that was good. It was interesting also hearing from the University Place School District about their 20 years of policy governance, because we've clearly been involved in policy governance, not quite that long, but for a long time around here. And so overall, and then just being able to be back together, I attended the superintendent component, which is really not technically part of the WASDA conference, but we hold it in the same hotel early in the morning on the first day of the conference because we're all going to be there. And that's when Susan Enfield was named Superintendent of the Year. And so it was a good opportunity for me to connect with some of my peers and colleagues as well. So all in all, I was appreciative that the event was held this year.
It certainly was much nicer than the full remote last year. Did anybody else? Marnie?
Just really quickly, I enjoyed hearing from the gentleman from Character Strong. So we had talked about it in the last board meeting, and then he was actually there. So the founder of that, and just hearing his perspective on kindness, which I just thought was really kind of meaningful and was appreciative at the time. I'm not sure I liked the way things were structured, where everything was, all the keynotes were on one day and all the breakouts were on another. I think it's hard to kind of sit in one spot and environment.
It was a lot of sit and
engage.
get.
It was.
Yeah.
But then I also find it very difficult in between when you do breakouts, going from one to the other. I end up talking with people and then missing half of a breakout session, which probably happened twice. I thought there was a great one about collaboration among regional boards. Yeah, it was actually, as somebody who was part of that group, it really is. I hope that we were able to convey just how meaningful that collaboration has been for us and that other districts. I think my takeaway was I really did hear other districts talking about who could we engage with, who could we start doing this with. So that was exciting to hear.
Sydney?
So I attended the inaugural networking event for school directors of color in Washington, which was super interesting. And frankly, had a lot more people than I expected to be there. There's probably about 30 people from around the state. It was a little light on networking, which I raised. It was a bit too businessy, but we did at least, I could encourage the group at the end to at least do introductions and understand where folks were in different districts across the state. And there's work being done there on, what is the support system and support network, given that most school directors of color, and there were lots of different ethnicities represented, are the onlys in their district in the state of Washington. And for some of those school directors, they are operating environments that are not necessarily friendly to them. And so it was a really, I think, a good start of a conversation to create a support structure for that group. And so I think it'll continue to see what it looks like in the future.
So I got to co-present along with Marnie and several colleagues in that presentation for our regional collaborative work that we've been doing. And then I attended the WASDA onboard module for equity in their introduction to that. And that's going to be is a requirement for all elected school board directors starting next year, where everyone's going to have to do, I think, like 4 to 8 hours of professional development on equity opinion on whether you're elected or re-elected. So I think that they are making good progress on that. And certainly Marnie and I are part of that work in WASDA to help push the professional development to be more expeditious and get it out to people. So it's less where they have to come only to Bellevue or only to Spokane, and to more regionalize it. So there's more opportunities for that in-person learning.
Excellent. And we can all remember that they've sent us information on how to access all the videos from the sessions that were recorded. So reminds me, I might go and listen to that session from Highline, because I wasn't able to attend that one. So that would be worthwhile to go back and try to pick up. All right. All right. So now we're going to take care of the items that we dispatched from earlier. So let's take care of the item that we pulled from the consent agenda. So it would take a motion for that particular item. So if you go down to the consent agenda, there's a motion attached to that item. And so I think we could use that motion, and then we could get that motion on the floor, and then we could amend it. Okay, Director Maraldo.
I move the board approve the certificated resignations, retirements, and non-renewals as presented.
So go ahead and second, and then we'll amend it.
Oh, okay, I'm
have-
sorry.
we have to have a motion.
Second, got it.
I move that we amend the effective date for Ronald Thiele's retirement to 06/30/2022.
I second that.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the certificated resignations, retirements, and non-renewals, but has been amended to have Ron Thiele's date be 6/30/2022. So we're going to start with the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, unless there's any debate.
So if we vote against it, that means.
I know, we
Yeah.
could try.
Say no.
I mean, we could try that.
Yeah, I think we should add an extra date in June. I wanna go with that.
Exactly. But barring that, I think we're going to have to go forward with this. So all those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so now, unless there's any debate on the now motion, it's been moved and seconded, or yes, to approve the certificated resignations, retirements, and non-renewals as amended. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so it has been amended and it's been approved, and darn, I guess we have to let you retire.
Thank you.
All right, so that one's, unless Diane has anything else, is that one good? Okay, we did it. And now we're going to take care of the walk-on item, which is the approval of the SEIU contract. So we'll start with a motion.
I move the board approve the SEIU contract as presented.
Did you want the big, long official one?
Oh, is there a big, oh, I'm sorry, you do it.
I move that the board approve the agreement reached with the Service Employees International Union, Local 925 SEIU, Issaquah School District Paraprofessionals, September 1, 2021 through August 31st, 2024.
I'll second that. That's a much better motion.
All right. Is there anything you would like to share on this item?
Well, I'm sure there's probably others too, but I just want to, first of all, thank the two teams, the team from SEIU and certainly the team from the Issaquah School District for rolling their sleeves up and getting the job done on this agreement. And it's not easy to do these things, so I really appreciate the effort they put forth. And I believe that it was ratified by our paraprofessionals last night at a very high percentage. So I'm happy about that. I'm happy that they're happy. We love our paraprofessionals and they've done a wonderful job for us during a very difficult time. And I hope that this helps them feel acknowledged and will help us continue to attract and retain quality paraprofessionals to serve our students.
All right. Any comments from the board or questions?
I just would also say, I'm glad to hear that it was ratified at such a high rate because I do want them to feel like they are getting as appropriate of a agreement as they can. The water they carry for this district for our students and families is pretty incredible. And I am so grateful for everything they do for our schools and our community. And I'm just glad that it's was a relatively smooth to this point.
I should have said to President Moore, I recommend this agreement.
That's key. Any other comments?
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our paraprofessionals and what they do. Our teachers are wonderful. They're in the classroom, but many of those pull-out services are done by paraprofessionals that are working one-on-one with students, and we appreciate that work as well. It is why we continue to have students who are successful in schools is the work of the entire community that's in there. And paraprofessionals really did a lot. There's a group of them that really, they support our students and they are oftentimes invisible. And a lot of parents know exactly who their teacher's kid is, but they don't necessarily know the paraprofessionals that might be working with their student.
Mhm. All right. If not, oh, Carlin, did you have something else? No? All right. If nothing else, then all those in favor of approval of, and I'm not going to say the entire motion, but the SEIU contract, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That has passed.
Thank you.
And we do appreciate that
Yes.
we were able to get that done. All right. So now we're back onto items. We're on to item number 3. And this is our opportunity to have a discussion and potentially take action on a superintendent search consultation services. The board had a board meeting on November 30th when we also had the town hall. And at that point, we agreed that Suzanne and I would reach out and interview superintendent search firms. And so we did that. We ended up speaking with and having proposals from 4 different firms. We spoke with Northwest Leadership, GR Recruiting, McPherson and Jacobson, and Hazard Young and Atia, or also referred to as HYA. They were all excellent firms and provided us good information. And so I think this is now our opportunity to discuss any proposal, positive things about the search firms, and try to work ourselves to a decision that we can move forward with so we can move forward with this process. So I don't know if Suzanne, you'd like to start by making any comments about the firms that we talked to?
Okay, well, first off, I appreciate the fact that all 4 of these firms made themselves available to speak with us on relatively short notice. And we as you remember at our November 30th meeting, we discussed the types of questions that the board wanted us to ask. So we had a laundry list of about 6 questions that we asked each firm. And they were broad enough that the firms could give us the overall presentation of their services and what they would do for us and the timelines and whatever. I think that based on what I heard from the board in terms of wanting to spread a national net and making sure that we don't just look at regional candidates, that sort of thing. I felt that both McPherson and Jacobson and HYA had the broadest reach in terms of the number of consultants that they had available across the country. Both of them have over 100 people who would be able to get the word out about Issaquah. All of the people who presented to us were very personable, very pleasant. I mean, I could imagine working with any of them. I do think the board is probably going to want to go with one of the 2 larger firms. They were fairly similar in process with a few exceptions here and there. They all had a good track record of people that they placed who were still in place after 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Relatively similar pricing structures and similar sorts of guarantees. If the superintendent, God forbid, doesn't work out, they will repeat the search. So yeah, I was very pleased with all of them. I think the 2 larger firms probably are where we want to focus.
So the board did have an opportunity during our exec session on personnel to discuss the qualifications. And so we were able to have a conversation about it, although this is our opportunity to take action. I did feel that, and in particular, the McPherson and Jacobson and HYA do have a more national reach to them, and so felt very good about that. They were all personable and in somebody that would be easy to collaborate and work with. Other thoughts or senses from the board? Sydney.
Sure. So first, thank both of you. Thank you for going through this process and spending the time to do the initial conversations and collect that information. Is very helpful to have your insights and your summary as we talked about this. So thank you. In looking at each of the agencies, obviously they all seem very well qualified. As I said, I guess probably at the town hall or before, that the national reach and having a wide net was important from my perspective as we look at organizations. And so I agree. It seems like the 2 we were just mentioning, McPherson, Jacobson, and HYA seem both well qualified to that end. I think, as well as I was pleased to see the level of detail around previous placements, length of tenure, et cetera. I think having the additional piece, I believe it was additional piece of information from McPherson Jacobson around candidate diversity, I thought was very helpful as well. So they seemed to be well positioned to help us look both locally with their Washington presence as well as nationally, and the ability to source a wide range of candidates for us.
Yeah, I think those are the 2 that I landed on. And I think there are things that draw me to one and there's things that draw me to the other. And that can be, I think, the challenging part is really kind of deciding between the 2 and which one we want to go with. I think, the fact that McPherson and Jacobson is one of the most used in the Washington state. You know, I hear concerns. I think that I'm very interested in a national search. I don't know how much of that they do, how much they're drawing outside Washington state. But at the same token, I need to make sure if somebody moves here, that they realize the sun does not come up 90 days, you know, other than 90 days, you will see the sun. And it's real. As people who transplanted here 20 years ago, I was originally from the Pacific Northwest, but my husband wasn't. And it was greatly impactful in our family. And we've seen that happen where superintendents do come from out of state, come from places where the sun shines a lot. This is going to be a big change. And those are things that they could be the perfect person, understand our community and just not be able to deal with it. So that is my biggest concern. I'd love to have somebody who has a national idea and that national perspective, because so much goes beyond Washington state. I'm concerned about having a superintendent who doesn't really know beyond the borders of Washington and doesn't have a lot of experience there. So I'm really torn because I think HYA would really be able to give us a national level of search. I'm just concerned that can they find somebody who will really commit to not only the community here, but the weather here. And it really does impact. It's you know, something you can joke about, but it can have devastating effects on a family and on a district to have somebody come in and just say they can't deal with it.
I am grateful for the work that you guys did to bring forth this. That was really, really helpful. I think that McPherson, by talking about candidate diversity, was really important to me. I think that McPherson will also be able to really engage candidates on fit for this region, because they do a lot of placements in the state of Washington, despite being a national search firm. And those are really important to me because it's gonna be big shoes to fill for anyone that follows our superintendent. And by virtue of being here 9 years, and we want a long-term superintendent. We're not looking for someone to come for a year or two. If we did one of that, we would be doing an interim process. So that fit part's really, really important to me. So.
Suzanne.
Yeah, and I do think that either one of these firms would do an excellent job for us. One of the things that struck me about McPherson, and one of the other companies also did this, was that the processes that they all use are fairly similar. They cast a broad net, they get 30, 40, 50 resumes. They work with the board to narrow those down to a manageable number. But then the step that they took was to reach out to each of those candidates with 3 questions, which are determined jointly by the board and the search firm, and do just a video of the candidates answering those questions. And then based on those videos, the board can, choose either a group to do a second level interview on, or maybe even just move to that step of identifying finalists, depending on where we're at. And not all the search firms did that. And I thought it was really interesting. It was certainly something that wasn't available to us 15 years ago when we went through this process. So I thought that was interesting.
All right. So we've shared thoughts. Our next step is to see if we're ready to take action. If we are, I need somebody to make a motion.
You want a motion?
I want a motion.
Well, based on what I'm hearing, I will throw out a motion that the board direct the superintendent to enter into a contract with McPherson and Jacobson to conduct our superintendent search firm.
I'll second that.
All right. Excellent. I appreciate, yes, all of them coming forward and talking with us and sharing with us about the work that they do. But I agree. I like McPherson and Jacobson for our search. So are there any other comments or debate on this one? Okay, then all those in favor of the board directing the superintendent to enter into a contract with McPherson and Jacobson to conduct our search, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. So we will.
Thank you. Yep, I
work
got my
together.
marching orders there. We'll
We'll work together.
reconnect, get the contact information, and we'll proceed, and we'll get a contract, review it, and get it back before your eyes. And thank you for that work. And I just know, again, as I've stated, I'll be of any service that is appropriate as we go through this process with you.
All right, and I'm going to bring this up later in agenda planning, just to check in and see, because with all of the search firms, one of the first things they want to do is meet with the board and be able to share with all of us their process, get our input on adaptations to that process, and get moving. So I will wait till we get to calendaring, but if there was any chance we could find a time that we could get together, it would help them jumpstart our process, which we want to get going as much as possible, because there are many steps to the interview process of interviewing the board, engaging with the community, and getting that kind of community input as we move forward. Okay. All right. All right. So next up, oh, we're almost on time. Oh, I jinxed it. Oh, don't say that. Okay, sorry. Next up is the agenda item on our levy discussion. The board at our previous meeting had requested the item to discuss our 2022 levy, to discuss and potential levy dates. The levy committee has, that our superintendent has chartered, has already gotten started and is doing their work. I know at least Suzanne and I were able to attend the first committee meeting just to hear them get started. Oh yeah, you were there too. That's right. Okay, but still you got to be there. There was a lot of activity going out at IMS that night with basketball or something going on. And so at this point, we could start with a discussion, we could start with a motion, but we really need to hone in on when we would like to see this levy be on the ballot. Suzanne.
I think it might be good to start with a motion, understanding that the motion can always be amended if the conversation goes a different way. So I will make a motion that the board instruct the district to run the levies that we ultimately decide upon on April 26th, 2022.
And I'll second that.
All right. Since we have a motion on the floor, I'm going to give it back to Suzanne to let us know why you've chosen to offer up April 26th, and then we can go through and the board can share their thoughts or debate on that particular date.
Okay, I think there's a number of reasons to go with the April date. The biggest one for me is that we have until the last meeting in April to determine whether or not we conduct a reduction in force. And if we do not have levy approval in April, even if we anticipate it in August, I think we would be foolish to count on it. And therefore, I think we would have to conduct a reduction in force. Then if it passed in August, we'd have to ask all those people to come back. They might or might not be available, but more importantly, that is really traumatic to a lot of people's lives to upend them and say, yeah, we're kind of not sure if we can offer you a contract, stay tuned, but you know, maybe not. It's just, it's traumatic for people. My other concern is, having talked to the volunteers for Issaquah schools who actually run our levy campaigns, if we run a levy in August, we have to be mobilizing volunteers in June and July, which is virtually impossible. People are checked out by June. They don't want to be doing school volunteering. We don't have PTA meetings to be going to. I don't know, there probably are Rotary and meetings like that we could attend, but it is a much, much harder lift to run a campaign in the middle of summer. So that's a practical consideration. But my real concern is having to do what I would hope would be an unnecessary riff. I don't want to do that to our teachers and our staff. It just seems like it's not necessary.
Marnie?
I would say, well, because I did second the motion, I exactly the same type of things. I think one of the things that we need to be certain of, and especially with the work of the levy committee, is what does the levy pay for? And are the items on there meaningful? And I think that's what we really need to talk about and be certain of, and make sure that information gets out to the community. And I think there's this hazard. I hear the voice and frustration of parents and of the community and of all that's happened over the past 2 years. And we certainly heard it on election night. And I understand that there's this sense of, what did the board do? The board didn't do enough. The school district didn't do enough. We hear it from our students. I didn't get in all the learning. I'm feeling a lot of pressure now. So I know that there's a lot of angst feelings. And so what we need to talk about is how those levy dollars is how we address many of the things that people are feeling right now. So I think it's about our message. And if our message is about what the levy will do for people, and it's valuable and it's meaningful, then that's why I think pursuing it in April, so we don't have to put more angst on our staff. Because that's at the end of the day, if we don't have a levy, the 5 of us here will still have our job until we get recalled for not having a levy. But they don't. And I think that to me, it's an untenable position to put them in. If the community comes back and says we're not passing the levy and it's April, then we deal with what we deal with. But I don't want to deal with that unless I have to. Unless the community says, no, you haven't put forward an offer I'm willing to pay for.
Right, and the challenge with levies is that a levy is levied over a calendar year, and we work on the school fiscal year. And so a school year spans 2 calendar years. And so the 22-23 school year has levy dollars from the 2022 levy, which has already been voted on and approved and is guaranteed, but it's the collection that would occur in 2023 that we cannot be certain of unless we run the levy in April, which would give us that certainty as we go into our budget. Or if it weren't to pass, we would then deal with it at that time and what that would mean. So I would agree that timing wise, needing to run the levy in April is critical. Either up? Okay.
So I hear what you guys are saying. I think that we are not far enough away from what was a really challenging year and impacted every student in our district, for our community to have the confidence to vote for a very large amount of tax dollars. And I absolutely want this to pass the first time. So I don't want to be in a position where like, oh, if we have to go through it, then we have to go through it. That's not what I want to do. And when we're asking people to, if we're choosing that the April date, that means the campaigning is during February and early March for ballot drop. We'll be in the height of a COVID surge with Omicron in the horizon. And I just think that's a bad time to be doing that. I think that our school district has done a phenomenal job, and our staff and administrative team, in having our schools be open, keeping them open, having us be singularly focused on the academic and social emotional recovery of our students. And I think that this would be an unnecessary and ill-timed distraction from what our main goal is. And it's not like we're through COVID. In fact, we'll be right in the heart of it. And so to ask our staff to do that one more thing is, I think, the wrong time of the year. So I understand what you're saying about April, but I just think the timing is wrong. And I frankly don't think that we're far enough away from, for our families and community to feel confident that we can deliver. We know, because we're in it week after week and see what's happened, but the community needs to see and feel like, hey, we've delivered. And I believe a spring with normal spring activities and graduations and hey, we've put a year in the books of in-person learning, I think will go a long ways to say, not tell me, but show me. So I'm not, it's not that I want an August date. It's that I don't want an April date. And that's the difference.
Sydney?
I'm processing that last comment. Like, so are you saying August then, or something after August before I get to my next comment?
Like if there was a late May date, that would be more ideal for me, because just from a pure where we will be, where I would forecast will be from a COVID standpoint and like the near the finish line to the end of the year, right? It's a different campaigning in late April than it is campaigning in February. Like we are just finishing first semester at that point versus like people will see like, oh wait, we've gotten the year done. They've seen it. We've delivered.
Unfortunately, it's not an option.
It's not, right? So,
Right. We're dealing with the only dates we have are very end of April. So April 26th, August 2nd, and November like 8th or something.
First
Yeah.
Tuesday. in
I would
November.
I would never advocate for November as a first date because we need a second date should the levy not pass.
so. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of variables and none of this is well timed, for sure. I think the two things that stick out to me as the things to be avoided are first, if there's anything that I felt was the most detrimental in the last year, it was the RIF and recall. And I think to walk into that again, when there was an opportunity to avoid it, even if it's not the highest probability opportunity, I just wouldn't feel comfortable putting that amount of sort of risk and instability into the system. I would feel comfortable saying we did everything that was possible to ensure a continuity when we're just getting back to continuity. The second piece for me is the piece around volunteerism for an August date. I think we are already struggling as a district in engagement and volunteerism and maybe it's exhaustion is one side of the coin or apathy is the other. I think we see a decreased participation across a number of things that would normally be well supported in our district. And the idea that by August, like that June and July, that people were going to give that attention, I think that's near impossible in our community. And I worry just even at voter turnout, like who will take that step to cast a ballot that time of year. I just think so those are the two things for me that while I completely would love to wait later, I would completely love to clear more hurdles and for people to feel more comfortable. I actually think it would be destabilizing to not at least attempt to take the step to secure the levy in April and then walk into that whole RIF cycle again.
Right.
And I would say
Oh.
that I would have those same concerns about an August date had I just not watched Best Starts for Kids, which is an educational levy, a $970 million levy in King County, passed at 67% in King County last August. So I don't think that there is history to show that that wouldn't be successful. And frankly, I don't want our teachers doing that one more thing this springtime. And I'd rather them have to dedicate some summertime to spread it out. But I know that I see that you have a hand up, just so you know.
Yeah.
for a second, but
But I just have to say, but if you look at the difference in voter turnout between King County and our district, it's dramatically different. So for me, that's actually a red flag.
Right, okay. I'm gonna make a comment and then I see Suzanne and then Marnie. I mean, I hear your point about the timing, but I also believe that by delaying the levy election to August puts us in the guaranteed untenable position of needing to do a RIF. And I think the action of doing a RIF of $25 to $50 million worth of program staff, things that we want in our district would be very disruptive and certainly more disruptive to our staff than the need to potentially, to the extent they are engaged in the levy and the campaign type work leading up to the April election. Suzanne.
Okay, so I was listening to what Harlan was saying about the fact that it's a challenging year and like the input we got from the students that which I thought was really, really interesting, by the way. I really appreciate that the students said what they did about just how hard it is to go, even though everybody wanted to go back in person, about how hard it was after you'd been remote for a year. And yes, everybody's still at that discomfort level. I want to suggest that, and this sort of picks up what Marnie was saying, that we use that to our advantage. We say, yes, we know this is a difficult year. It's difficult for teachers. It's difficult for students. And this is what's in our levy that is going to help that. These are the mental health counselors that are going to help our kids get through this. And these are, I don't know, do we still have teacher mentors in there? These are the teacher mentors that are going to help our teachers. I don't know exactly.
PBSES coaches.
We don't have a levy yet, so I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But yes, PBSES coaches. This is how we are addressing the problems that we know we still have in the system. If we have to do a RIF, that creates whole new problems in the system, and that creates an incredible hurdle for teachers, and it's going to create tremendous anger among parents. It's going to do a lot of very destabilizing things. The other thing, and finance would have to agree with me or not on this because I'm not 100% sure, but I don't want to put our CFO in a position of having to do two budgets, right? If we don't run a levy till August, well, here's the budget if it passes, here's the budget if it fails. I mean, that's a lot of uncertainty for admin as well, as they're trying to start a new year and they don't know if the levy's in place and they don't know if those supports are in place. So I think waiting till August has more destabilizing effects than running in April, even though we're not really sure that the community is giving us the love in April. I think we have to just go out on a limb and say, look, we know it's hard. Here's how we're going to try to make it better. And we really hope you support this.
And then Marnie was next.
Well, I think that, my biggest concern is a RIF. I don't know how we get past it. I think that the CFO will still have to do two budgets. What if it passes in April? What if it doesn't pass in April? But I think there are so many districts that got a ton of ESSER dollars that don't even know what to do with it. They can't hire the staff. They have the money and they can't hire the staff. I don't want to give them staff to hire.
Right,
Because there's this idea that we can recall them, and there is places all around us, every
Right.
single school district around us that could hire them.
Agreed. If we do a RIF in April, because we're going to run in August, that staff won't be waiting around for us to
No.
recall them in August after we pass our levy.
And there's teachers, there's professional development that begins in the beginning of August that they're not going to be there for. I mean, there's just way too many barriers, and why we need to work like mad as a board, talking about the need of this levy, the advantages of this levy, what it does for our community, and not let it fail in April.
Mhm. Since I've given everybody a chance to speak, I wanted to see if there was public input before we continue on our process. So we'll take public input in the room first. And then Stephen, you can help me if there's anybody on Zoom too that want to give public input. So I'm going to go to the room first, and then you can flip us over and help me get the Zoom people up. I saw that George, who spoke before, is here. And again, if you could state your name, the area you're from. It's still a 2-minute limit, and Suzanne here will be doing our timer. And for those that are on Zoom who can't see the countdown that is up at the podium, you'll hear a beeping sound. And then at that point, you'll need to wrap up what you're saying. I'll give you a couple seconds, but then that's it. And so we'll go ahead and start with George here in the room.
Yeah, hi, I'm George Sach, and I live in the Issaquah Highlands. I was listening to what you're saying, and one thing to consider is that the market for people looking for jobs is red hot now. So even in education, you may have people who get frustrated by this and decide to do something else, and they're able to at this point. So I would be concerned if you were to let people go. I think Marnie said it. They most likely won't be there when you are looking for them again. And in a very, very tight labor market, you may struggle, even if you get the money you want, to get the people you want. That's it.
Thank you for your input. And oh boy. All right, so on the Zoom, I think that says Durana. And so we'll ask for her input. And we'll let her unmute. All right, it looks like you're unmuted.
Yeah, thank
There we
you.
go.
I'm Durana Burkholder, Issaquah Education Association President, and I'm here to speak with the board wearing kind of two hats. I first want to speak to my first hat, which is always and will be my educator hat of now going on 15 years and 14 years in the Issaquah School District. And I know as an educator in Issaquah how important these school levies are to educators, but most importantly, how impactful these enrichment levies are to our students. And as educators in Issaquah, we have had a tremendous amount of support with the volunteers in Issaquah School District in the different campaigns that the levies have run, including phone banks, honkin' waves, and personalized messages that we send to our family community, encouraging them to vote for the levy. And through all of those campaigns, educators have been present for those come the winter months and spring months. And my concern as an educator is if we push a levy to August, that educators won't be present because this year has already been so difficult. Come the end of the school year, many educators will be off and taking care of themselves and being with their family. And to ask educators to be present in the summer months to run a campaign will be very challenging. And to speak a little bit with my second hat as the president, it does bring me concern that if we do wait until August to run a levy campaign, that the domino effect that will happen to RIFs and to educators is going to be really impactful. So I encourage you to vote for an April campaign. Thank you.
Let's get my mic back on. Thank you, Durana, for your input. And I see a second hand up for Meg Ivor.
Hi, I'm Meg Iyer. I'm actually on the Levy Committee representing Pine Lake Middle School. I have 2 students that go there. I'm also a school psychologist in the district, and I work at Skyline. And I just wanted to talk for a minute to propose that we do the April ballot. Our committee is really dedicated. We're working really hard, even in between meetings. And I also want to remind the board and the community, we're not looking to increase taxes. The other levy will run out. And so we're calling it a renewal because we're not asking for additional above what is already there. Being a school psychologist, seeing how hard this year has been for students, especially their mental health, I really hope that this levy passes. And I think we're going to have parents and students and staff out to support it. This includes MTSS and inclusion, mental health counseling, positive behavior coaches, family partnerships, the seven periods at the high school, which is really important for students, especially those that are struggling and maybe not passing all of their classes. They can still graduate on time if they're 7. And then at the younger ages, the elementary dual language, the preschool and kindergarten in the summer. And I want to encourage everybody to go to the Levy website. There's an email that you can write. We want to hear from the community. We're getting the word out. We feel like if we can get a lot of engagement now and we can hear everybody's views, we can get a package together that will pass. So thank you. And I'm really hoping for the April.
Thank you, Meg. Is there anyone else on Zoom or in the room that would like to give input? All right, I don't see anybody. So I'll turn it back to the board. If there are any more, I'm going to go with Sydney and then Suzanne. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw you. I did. I saw you. Okay. Sorry. Oh, no, I thought you were cueing me to pick you. Okay, so then Suzanne.
I just had one more thought as I was listening to public input. I was thinking about the RIF in terms of how damaging it is to the system, how damaging it is to the staff who are RIFed. And it suddenly flashed in my mind that if we do a RIF in April, we are also teaching in May and in June with a way reduced staff, right? Or no, those people don't go away till the end.
They don't go away till the
Never
end.
mind.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
brain just.
But it might
went-
impact
Yeah.
summer school opportunities. It might, it really would impact what we're doing the following year for
Well,
students.
and it would already give the staff that have been RIFed, because a RIF declares who is not getting a contract to be
Right.
looking for other jobs.
Yeah,
So
no, as
although
soon
they're
as-
still in our schools, they could already be looking for other places.
Yeah, no, as soon as I said it, I realized that I was wrong because, yes,
Oh.
obviously it's contractual, but I still stand by a RIF is a bad thing.
Okay, and our superintendent would like to make comments. So
Ju-
thank you for
just a
pointing that out.
couple of points, and I appreciate the conversation with the board. I think you've touched on a lot of the important issues. A few things that stand out to me. Thank you, Director Moraldo, for acknowledging the lack of federal ESSER dollars for COVID relief that we received. I think that could have changed our conversation if we were one of those districts that was sitting on tens of millions of dollars right now. I think it, just to be clear to the public, and I think it came out fairly clearly that the state sets the 4 dates a year that we can actually hold elections. So it's not as if we just get to randomly pick a date. Those 4 dates are set. The state also sets the date by which we must notify certificated staff if they'll be non-renewed. So a lot of these things are kind of crashing together at the same time. So I understand the dilemma that puts us in terms of timing and budget development, because it all kind of comes to a head at the same time. I do want to be clear too that, we had a discussion earlier, this board did it back several weeks ago, months ago. And at that time, there was even the discussion between February and April. And pretty quickly, for many of the reasons that Director Gallinger has spoke to, we were like, no, we need more time to rebuild trust in our community. And I completely agree with that. Interestingly, and I know all politics is local, but we are part of a larger region. Every district around us will be running in February. So I think we're going to get some bellwethers on maybe how some folks are feeling. And again, those are different districts. It's not Issaquah, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in those levy elections with all of our surrounding neighbors this coming February. And then lastly, I do want to acknowledge that even an April vote is going to present challenges in the budget development, and our HR team is going to have to, and our business office, be prepared, because we always hope for the best, but we plan for the worst. And so we will have to develop scenarios, and we will have to be able to turn those scenarios very quickly, because you're going to have an April election at the end of April, and we're going to have to do notifications right away. So we'll have to be prepared for the event that it could fail. And so we'll do all of that work behind the scenes. We can do that without executing a RIF if that fund the 26th. And then even acknowledging that we may not know the outcome of a levy on the 26th, because sometimes we have close elections in Issaquah. And so it'll be very tight and challenging, but it is something that we can do. So I appreciate the conversation, and I hope the message too that I heard from the board and I appreciate is that we really are working hard. Our staff is working so hard right now to rebuild that trust in the community, because we know how difficult the forced shutdown of our schools was during the last school season, and how hard it was to get the schools reopened and the gradually reopening and adding more and more students as the year went on. And we finished strong, and we finished with a lot of confidence, and then came the Delta variant. And of course, now we have another variant that's out there, but we will continue to do everything in our power to rebuild that trust and get our kids actively engaged in the school system, and our community back actively engaged in this school system. I just personally, I see this public school system as a great treasure for this community. And during my tenure, my long tenure here, they've always behaved that way and supported their school district. And I know we've rattled that confidence a bit, but I'm hopeful that we will rebuild that trust, whether it be April, August, or whenever it is. And I think we're doing a good job at that right now by keeping our schools open and functioning. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, back to Harlan.
So I would say I don't support nor want a RIF either. Like, I didn't support one last spring, actually. But more importantly, I don't want to support and can't in good faith support levy timing that I think will fail. And you may recall 4 years ago when we put this on the ballot post McCleary in this community, ours passed at 53%. And all our surrounding districts had very different outcomes. So while I think that February will give us data, I don't think it's actually going to be bellwether data, because our district was very different in how we voted post McCleary. And I think there is a far more contention in our community right now than there was post McCleary. So I just don't think we're there yet. And I think that we're going to get there, because I think that the trajectory is really, really good. But it costs a lot of money for our volunteers to campaign and run a school levy. And so if we were to put this on April and fail in April, I don't even know where they would get the money to run another campaign. And that's my biggest fear. I want first pass, first time.
I think we all do. All right, any other comments before we vote? I'm not seeing anybody. All right. All right. It's been moved and seconded that the board instruct the district to run levies on April 26, 2022. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The motion passes, and at this point, the board is directing you to move forward with the levies at the April date. And we'll continue to watch the good work of the levy committee as they process what will be the final levy package that they, and as we all recognize, that they recommend to you and you recommend to us, and the board has the final say on what the actual package holds.
No, we will, as was noted earlier, our levy committee has begun that work because we figured it wouldn't hurt to get started regardless of whether it was in April or August date. I appreciate the conversation, and I think it also informs the urgency of our work and the big task ahead of us. But I'm very confident. And one thing that we can certainly all agree on is we don't want to ever fail. We want to pass the first time. So everybody will work hard. We do have a date by which we have to register with King County to be on the April ballot. We'll make sure that that happens, and I'll continue to provide updates on the work of the Levy Development Committee and look forward to bringing you a package for your consideration hopefully by the end of January. That's the goal that we've set. So we know it's going to be a truncated campaign. We're going to have to work really hard, and hopefully the virus, the COVID virus and the new variant won't create the disruption that it potentially could for us. But we have our orders and we'll move forward. Thank you.
Right, yes, the board will expect to hear the package, hopefully, as you said, by the end of January, because we have to be able to turn in the ballot measure to King County by February 25th is the date. So I know we have our February 10th board meeting, which would be ideal to no later than that date. Otherwise, it would be a
Yes.
special meeting that we could arrange for to handle that. But that is the timing that would get that ballot information to King County to have us move forward with April 26th.
My goal is to always not have you have special meetings
Yes.
on my behalf, but we'll do our darndest to get all that work done.
Okay, Suzanne, did you have something? Oh, okay. All right, well then that takes care of this particular item. And now we are on to ends 2, parts 1 and 2. This is a preview. And so this is your opportunity, I think, to present what you see going into ends 2, part 1 and 2, or any changes, and gives the board a chance to ask questions and discuss this one.
No, I appreciate this. This is a bit of the unique Issaquah policy governance process that we've created and that I greatly appreciate as your superintendent. This year, our pre-monitoring discussion on ends 2 academics and foundations, we will have several things we're having to change this year in this year's report as a result of the pandemic and the closure of our schools to in-person learning during much of last year, which is the period of this monitoring. You'll see that we have some new assessment data in this report. The use of iReady data will appear prominently, and some different uses of the state assessment, the Smarter Balance assessment, as the state changed up some things coming as we've been transitioning out of the pandemic closures. You will notice from the draft that we sent you that we still do have some work to do entering some of our PSAT and other high school assessment data as well. So you haven't seen a completed report. That will come at the next monitoring phase 1 and in the first meeting and part 2 in the second. As a reminder, this report will come back again in those 2 times. I've asked our Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, Rich Mellish, to come up and speak to the different assessments because that's the biggest change. And we will all be listening, and the staff and I and Rich, to the board for any questions the board might have as we prepare the final monitoring report. So I'm going to have Executive Director Mellish come up. One note while Rich is coming up to the podium too, you will notice in these drafts from our earlier discussions of monitoring reports, we are using these as an effort to create a historical record as well of the pandemic's impact on our school system and on public education in general in our region. And so you will see notations in there about why data is different or absent and things like that as it relates to the pandemic. So Rich, I know you've prepared some talking points around some of the data used. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and then we'll take any questions from the board.
All right, of course, Rich Mellish, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning Services. So clearly the area that we had the most control over were our district assessments. And so 2 major changes. The smaller one are just that our secondary common assessments, we rethought them in 2 ways. One is to really make sure that they were focused on the essential learnings that we wanted to make sure prepared students for whatever course they were taking next. So we did alter some of many of our secondary common assessments. The second thing we did with that was we actually looked for opportunities to improve them while we did that. So we have some that we actually feel better assess the core learning outcomes of the courses. So that does mean that when we're comparing previous common assessments to the ones given last year, they are an altered version of the common assessments. But the bigger change was the integration of iReady for reading in K-8 and for math in K-5. We also used Alex as an assessment in middle school math as well. So There are a lot of questions because it's not something we have great historical data on. What we do know is that some very large scale Washington studies were done pre-COVID to look for a correlation between achievement of the standards as measured on the SBA and achievement of the benchmarks in iReady. And they found a very strong 80% plus correlation of that benchmark for meeting standard. And that's a year-end expectation. And we've worked with them to try to also say, so what does that mean about where a student should be when we administer it in the first weeks of school? And where should a student be when we administer it in January? And where should a student be when we administer it in April? So we're creating district benchmarks based on their data, their research. But that's something that we're going to get better at and better at interpreting as we go through. The final piece that I just want to say before I ask if there's any questions is that we really got down the road with iReady pre-COVID because we were looking to get better in diagnostic information for our students to inform tiered supports, to inform kind of a diagnostic approach to identifying the needs and gaps that students have and how we could match that to instruction to address those needs. And that's where we're really starting to get better and better at using that data. And the teachers have a robust way of drilling down tons of reports. To give one example of how it's used, when students take the iReady math in the fall, it catalogs all their prerequisite skills that they have for various topics. When a teacher goes in to now teach a new topic in a new unit, they can enter into iReady what topics they're going into, and it will tell you which students have the prerequisite skills to be able to approach that topic, which skills students are missing, and it'll group students by saying this group of students needs some work on these prerequisite skills. Then our Eureka and Zern resources for our core curriculum have resources to address that, but also iReady provides some personalized learning pathway tools and small group instruction tools that teachers can use to additionally provide supports for students. So that's just one example that, yes, this is a tool that we're using to try to monitor overall achievement in our district, but it's really a tool that's designed first and foremost to inform the teacher of the specific needs of their students so that they can address those through instruction. I will stop there and see if there's any questions that I can address on that. I will note for the public that did send, I hope you all received the iReady primer to kind of give a summary of some of the background about iReady that I sent to the board this week.
Rich, I think I know the answer to this question, but the state hasn't released any district by district SBAC data from the fall administration yet, have they?
No, and we should note that the fall administration, please recall that it's actually a delayed administration of the spring. So our fourth grade students took the third grade SBA. They have signaled that they're going to give us final scores in February, which I'm not exactly sure why. And that's when they're talking about releasing the district comparisons. That is unfortunately a delay that we're bracing ourselves for in terms of the final.
So we mean that we probably won't have comparison data by the time we monitor these, then it looks like.
Not according to the signals we're getting out of OSPI at this time.
Okay, thank you for that.
Rich, oh, and I don't know if you were.
Probably the same thing.
Yeah,
We did not.
we didn't
receive
get
what
anything.
document You were referring to
About iReady?
about iReady?
It's not jumping out at me that it's something I've seen.
Okay.
I got it, I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
Ron got it. I used the school board at Issaquah
Oh,
in our, okay. Well, that's a bummer.
we'll have to, I guess all of us are kind of drawing a blank.
Thank
I don't
goodness it wasn't
remember
just me.
seeing it.
I thought, am I?
I spent a lot of time writing that so that
Oh.
you'd be ready today.
Well, and that's why we want to find it so that we can,
Yeah,
we
okay,
can
well,
read it before we do.
all right.
You would-
Well, I will make sure you get that. I'll look it up while we're sitting here tonight
Yeah,
and make
okay.
sure you get that. I use the school board
Yeah.
email address.
I'm almost certain I received it, but I don't know if you put me in as a copy because I'm in, but I am
thought
in
I
that
might have put you in
address.
as a CC, but
Okay.
okay.
iReady primer,
Yes.
Tuesday. At what time? Yeah,
Can you see the school board?
yeah, to
email
school
address?
board.
On
Okay.
the,
I wonder-
it's Tuesday, the 7th?
Mhm.
Sorry.
At
Maybe I thought I
3:10
was-
PM.
Okay.
I wonder if it went into a spam folder or something.
Oh,
Yeah, it went to the school board, it went to me, to Josh, it went to the whole cabinet, it looks like, or maybe the ed planning team
Oh, but,
with an attachment.
Okay, well,
So you got it to the superintendent, but apparently
yeah,
that's weird though. I mean,
yeah, I'm looking to see if it ended up in the junk, but we'll have to have you all send it to us again.
here, maybe I could do it right here.
Yeah, so that we can see it. Okay,
yeah.
well, that's okay,
So
'cause we can
then,
still read
since
it.
you haven't read that, there is one more piece that I think is worth mentioning, is that one of the things that iReady provides us are what's called typical and stretch growth goals for each student in reading and math as they take it. So it allows us to identify whether they're keeping up with the growth in standard that's expected for them at their from their baseline level, but it also sets a goal for gap closing growth. So we actually now have an interesting measure, a target for students that do have a gap that says, here's a really good goal, where you want to get them in a year. And so it's a really nice way for us to have an objective measure of whether or not we're closing student gaps. And that is one unique thing about iReady that we're excited to learn more about and explore the use of. Okay.
This is pulling up my text.
Can you just walk me through the chart that's labeled ELA grade 6 through 8 iReady reading SBA assessment report 2019, 2021?
Okay, so ELA iReady,
You probably will open it up, but you.
yeah. Is that the one in 2.1?
It's important.
Okay,
Yeah, 2.1.
2.1.
Okay,
Because it has, so we have, help me understand the difference between the final results.
it's on page 4 of the first.
In February, but we have preliminary data.
Yeah, I'm seeing if he can pull it up so I can refer to it where we all see it. Yes, I think it's that one.
Just tried to send it to you guys.
Oh, I've got a different one of mine. That looks like that's the 10th grade. Could we go back? It's you wanted the 6th through 8th grade one? Yeah. So page 4 and. Okay, yes, so
Scroll down to the bottom of this page. So we have preliminary SBA data.
so the preliminary SBA is this fall's data. We have received scores from the state, and they are in our homeroom school information system as preliminary scores. And then once the state finalizes them, we overwrite them with the final scores. So we do, and it is possible they change. They've only changed like once when they invalidated an item. But so the preliminary scores are relatively accurate. So yes, we do have this fall's makeup test from last spring in here.
Okay, and then is the top, am I supposed to interpret it so if you go up a little bit, Stephen, so the first set of bars,
Yes.
that's supposed to be what we would interpret as correlation data, potentially between the iReady spring score, even though we don't know the student by student at this point, just saying you globally.
Yeah, we have student, we have done analysis and I've done some correlation study between, so the iReady that you see here is from last spring. So administered May, June remotely. And then the graph right below it, the SBA was administered October, November this year. Not exactly the same students because we had some change and, some changes. We did know that iReady tends to have lower scores than SBA in a student by student comparison. iReady gave us some research on that. There's a bigger difference than we anticipated in those two measures. I just don't have enough experience yet to really conclude all the why. I think that as we get more, we also have to remember that this SBA was a modified SBA. It only had the multiple choice portion, not the extended response portion. So not only was it given at a different time of year, it didn't have what was considered some of the harder portions of the test included. So I've been interpreting it as the actual is somewhere in between these two.
So if I look at the very top, Stephen, where it says, if I'm doing it correlate by cohort,
Yes.
so it would be the sixth graders in 2018-19 are the eighth graders in 2021? Or would those be would that really be the seventh graders? Because those are seventh grade scores. Do you know what I'm saying?
I see what you're asking.
So would
So
it
that
be-
the top chart,
Yes,
so
it would be the sixth grade is really that's the seventh grade of 2021?
yeah,
Or-
so when it says sixth grade, it's what test they took. So in the 2021, the seventh graders took the sixth grade test because that's what they would have taken in the spring of
The
2021.
1920 school year.
Right.
Okay.
So you can do that where that 2019 sixth grader
Sure.
is now a ninth grader, but took the eighth grade test.
So
So
when I,
yes,
okay, so when I look at this and see our seventh grade scores for our cohort that was seventh graders in 2018-19 have had dramatic learning loss.
well, you
for-
can't see that particular cohort's gone because they'd be that, no, because that's not seventh graders. That's the students who took the seventh grade test. They are now, those seventh graders then are now 10th graders and did not take the SBA in the fall. So you can look at the sixth grade. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
You
Yeah.
lost some of us.
Right. Okay, that's the chart. And then Stephen, can you
Let's
zoom
look at the,
in?
do the math, do the math.
Oh.
There.
Since these are 2 years apart, this cohort, I'll call it, because it's not a true cohort. This group is now this group.
So it is the eighth graders. Okay.
Yeah.
So
They're actually now ninth graders.
But they took the eighth grade test. And so you're showing them as eighth grade because they took the eighth grade test.
Yeah.
It's the
This is
test, not the students.
It's the test, not the students. Yes, think of it that way. And it
Mm.
follows a pattern that makes sense.
So it shows me, at least looking at it, that language arts was
Yeah.
relatively preserved, but math was dramatically impacted by.
Right.
Yes.
And I think you guys
that
have
is
been
a-
telling
and that
us
is a
that.
pattern, that is a
Yes.
pattern throughout the data that math had a pretty significant
Okay.
impact. Especially starting around fourth, fifth grade.
I mean, that's a terrifying impact,
Yes.
actually, is what that is.
Our math teachers throughout the system are taking this extremely seriously.
Are they? I mean, give me some examples for like, what does it mean taking it very seriously? I'd love
So
to
like
know.
throughout, so our geometry teachers are weaving in algebra throughout their year. They built in algebra throughout the geometry to make sure students are ready for Algebra 2 next year. They are really doing a lot. They've worked really hard together to come up with pre-assessments of prerequisite skills for each of their units to really identify what students know and don't know and come up with strategies to address that. We increased our elementary math TOSA it was a half-time TOSA to a full-time TOSA, and she's working really hard going out to schools and showing them how to use that prerequisite skill report to identify the very specific needs of students. And so that we can address that, we're really encouraging the use of some of the tools like Zern and iReady to really try to backfill those. So there's a lot of efforts happening. What we're not sure is what the quick fixes are. So students who are quite adept at math, but just missed instruction. We think those are probably some areas where we might have some quicker fixes, because if we can just get them good quality instruction on those things, they've typically picked up skills quickly. Those we think we can get there. And then we're also trying to identify which students are having some longer term needs that we're going to have to really persist at for the years to come.
Yeah, I guess as an elementary parent, I think I deserve, and all of our parents deserve to have gotten a report. I would love to know what gaps my child has so I can do that work at home as well.
Yes.
And so to have no access to that is.
Yes. So
Also terrifying.
we put the iReady family report on family access for families that gave a summary view. And then, of course, during conferences, we're hoping that parents are able to have that conversation, which we just had with their teacher of what they're seeing and noticing. So the family report, the second page of that family report listed some of those skills to be working on and some of those skills that they were successful on the assessment.
I guess I want the SBA.
Oh, this is the other problem with the SBA this year. They're giving us, there's no strand or no strand breakdown and no skill breakdown from the SBA this fall. They're not providing that to the school district. They're not providing it across the state.
Is there a score?
All we get is a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4 for each student. There's a scale score that's associated with that. But there's no scale score that says, here's the types of items. They usually give us a report that says, here's the type of items the student did well on. They are not providing that this year in the fall. We'll not have it until the spring.
Have we provided the scale scores in the 1, 2, 3, or 4 to our
Yes,
parents?
we have. We sent it out on right before conferences. So that would have been
That was the goal, was to have that data out there in parents' hands for their conference.
yes, we got it out there either right before Thanksgiving or right after. I think it was right after Thanksgiving. We sent the email that said, here's how to access we sent an e-news that said, here's how to access your SBA scores. And here's a link to the explanation of the scales of the scores.
And then for elementary, that could be discussed at the conferences.
Yes.
That was the goal.
Yes, and
Conferences were held last week.
Right,
Yes.
that's what I mean. But that would have been one of the key
That-
things for teachers to be conversing, to make sure parents are seeing. I don't have an
Yeah.
elementary child, so I don't know what that actually looks like.
Yeah,
Or how teachers can know if the parents are actually going in and making the connection to actually go in and look at it.
I think it's important to note too, that is not a parent's only opportunity to
Yeah.
communicate with their child's teacher.
So
If there are parents out there just discovering or kind of wrapping their head around
Yeah.
this, I would encourage them to reach out to the teacher and contact the teacher.
yeah, please do know that the state usually provides a family report. We usually get it a couple months after the test, but that's of course usually because we get it over the summer and then we're able to give it to parents in the fall. At this point, we do not believe we will be getting any family reports from OSPI from the fall SBA. We believe that what they've given us and what we put in test scores in Skyward Family Access is the extent of what the information they're going to give us. Yeah.
I guess the other thing that
Marty's
concerns
got a
me about
question,
this is, oh, I'm sorry.
So this might be, and maybe this is going to be an Andrea question, but I'm really, how many students, if they got like a D or an F, were just passed on to the next math class? Because were we giving Fs? Were we giving incompletes? I mean, to me, I look at this data and I'm like, well, shoot, we pretty much should have told every student, just retake your math class. Like, unless there was something that was going on in your class that you felt confident you gained that experience, that I think just overall, and that was kind of my feeling last year, like math is the hardest thing to be learning remotely and on your own. And is there something we can do about it? Thank you, Andrea.
Andrea McCormick, Executive Director of High School. I also want to just say, as an elementary parent, I received my kids' SBAC scores on November 10th. My school sent out a newsletter and received that information. It had a scale report and a level report, and my kids' teacher went over that at conferences. So I didn't know if that was helpful. For high school math scores, placement. It's a variety of things based on family and school partnership. So sometimes families want to go on to the next level because they're willing to participate in summer school or various contributing factors to why they believe the score was low. They felt like it was just the online learning environment that the student picked up on some of the skills and they felt like they could do that, or through summer school. So math teachers made recommendations to students in the spring based on how things had gone last year. And we had automatically placed those recommendations into the students' course selection. So when they logged in to do their course selection in Skyward, the recommended math class was already sitting there. So they had to make a conscious choice to remove it. And then we provided a lot of different information around what other access for support would be available, like a lab class, like a support class, if they wanted to choose that, to do that as an elective alongside their math class if they wanted to progress. Some students chose to concurrently retake, say, Algebra 1 and take geometry in the same year. So they double up on math because they can do that with Algebra 1 and geometry, or geometry and Algebra 2. So it's a pretty wide variety. I can try to get that data for you in terms of how many students that had Ds and Fs took the concurrent class or repeated, and how many completed that through summer school. I can get more robust data on the math progression from COVID years and get that to the board if you'd like that.
Great, thank you. I think it would be helpful to really understand, so we can be communicating out to when we get those emails or phone calls or whatever, that we can talk to what we are doing.
Yep, I can get you that data and disaggregate it by school.
Okay. I think the other piece for me, I know that we're getting this data really late, but we have kind of the preliminary data. Is there any way that, I know we're starting, we're already into second trimester in the middle schools, but I'm thinking third trimester, just really increasing those supports for students that, hey, unless you're in a year-long elective, you'll need to be taking a math lab instead of, survival techniques or something like that, and kind of looking at schedules. And I know that Jason's not here today, but something
Yeah, I will say
really at the
also
middle
at high school, I can just add that they're also looking at semester 1 data right now. I mean, semester's not completed, but they have pretty good data right now about how students have progressed up to till December. So using like the midterm and quarter grades. And they're having conversations with students right now about other options about switching math classes potentially at semester, and looking at using summer school or taking some of those concurrent classes. So there's already some partnerships going on with families that are continuing to struggle in this year's placement based on what they selected with all that other information. So I know that like at Issaquah High, they're looking at collapsing one of the Algebra 2 sections and adding a support class in for some students because there's enough kids in that population that want to make a change. So some of that work is already happening for an actual school schedule change to add some of those supports in within the school day.
I do know as well too, Director Moraldo, that our, with the support from our friends in the foundation, our after school support is starting to kick up more in our middle level as well. I think even in our elementary level as well, but because recognizing that there's a need for that because they don't have the 7-period day and some of the options that might be available at the high school level too. And, this data, and I know I had shared some preliminary of our preliminary analysis with the board and some previous communications, but the reaction that I saw here was the same reaction in the cabinet and the Ed Planning Committee. We right away, and credit to Rich and his team because they quickly got this out in front of us and we could start to see what the biggest impacts of the COVID shutdown were. And clearly it was identified in math. We've broken this down even further because when you look at the regular math students, your advanced place students, when you pull them out, they didn't experience quite the negativity here, but our regular students did. And that's a real concern to us. Our regular CC6, CC7, that's a concern for us.
I would say Common Core 6 would probably be my biggest concern because that's that they really didn't have any other place to go but CC6. There wasn't anything before that. And I think that was the year of struggle from the end of 4th grade and all of 5th grade and really not getting those math concepts that we know historically are harder for elementary teachers to teach the 5th grade math to a level of clarity for a lot of students. And I know that when my daughter was in school, they would switch classroom teachers so that more skilled math teachers at 5th grade were teaching.
And Suzanne, I know you had a question or comment.
Well, yeah, and it actually kind of dovetails with what Marnie was saying because, I look at those numbers and my first reaction is the same as everybody else's, which is, oh my goodness, how do we get these kids back up to speed? But I'm concerned with how we balance that with some of the input that we heard from kids of, I was out for a year and a half and now my teachers expect me to have learned all this stuff I didn't learn and I'm stressed and I don't know how to deal with it. And math is quite a bit sequential, so it's hard to go on to the second concepts if you haven't learned the first concepts. And I mean, I think Marnie's question about what math classes are we taking and does it make sense to repeat math classes, that's important. I don't want our kids to be super stressed out. I also don't want them to be academically behind. And then, Harlan made his comment as a parent of, I want to know what I need to help my kid with. And then that brings up the whole concept of equity issues, because some parents can help their kids with math and some parents simply can't. And it's an incredible juggling act. I don't know how we bring kids back up to levels without stressing them out, without stressing their teachers out, because now teachers have 3 grades worth of classes in their class and they used to have 1. And I don't know. I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment. I'm just really concerned about balancing all that and not adding to the overwhelming stress and anxiety that our students and teachers already have.
So as someone currently living through all the stress and anxiety with a middle and high schooler, I do think the current opportunity seems to be like, what's the plan forward? So is it best to switch out courses? Is it best to plan for repeat summer school? And I know we just have done all this amazing work to do all the plans to get folks back up to speed who we knew were struggling. I just think it's another round of that. Like there's the next wave of kind of the kiddos that were fair to Midland who are hitting a real stress point at this point, and just what are the real options, and which of those don't maybe feel like personal failure, right? So is that, hey, for you, it's an extra support after school because that's something that individual kiddo can manage, or is it summer school or a repeative section? I think that would be helpful, maybe at a counselor level or something, just to get some individual plans for those who are kind of in this middle stressor area.
And the key to that is the engagement between the teachers and the families, the parents and the student, to understand where each kid is that is struggling with gaps in their skills and what individual things can be done for them. As you're saying, whether it's, doubling up on something or an after school, or figuring out how to get them to, far enough along that they can use summer school to catch up. But there's got to be a lot of engagement with the student and the families to find the intervention that's the right fit to be successful.
I will say, if you don't mind me jumping in, that probably the best thing happening right now are vertical conversations with our math teams. So they are really, at every school, I'm hearing from principals and math teachers that they are talking not about how will I just address the needs of my students now, but how are we going to work over time to get students back on track. So what are we going to do in 6th grade that leads to 7th grade, that leads to 8th grade, and making sure that I understand exactly where you're leaving these students off and can take them that next step. So what that leads me to believe is that we just had trimester grades from the middle schools go out not too long ago. And that is meant to be an indicator of whether or not they're keeping up with the instruction and the learning in the class. And those teachers are trying to make sure that they're slowly closing that gap and getting those skills in for those students, so that we can, because they know that this is what in MTSS we call a tier 1 problem. It is not a tier 2 problem. It's not about intervention. It's about, because it is more than 20% of the students. This is something we need to build into the core instruction to bring the whole group up. And that's the conversations that they're having at all of our schools. I will say that you'll see in the iReady, because we did do iReady math 3 times last year. So you have in ends 2, the second part, the data from last year of the 3 administrations of the math, and it really does visually show you what the problem is. And that we know that 4th and 5th grade are also have to be thrown into this math conversation, because that's when they're starting to get into those more complex math skills. So yes, Common Core 6 is really important. Our 5th grade teachers know that they've got to get them ready.
I think just as a parent, assuming that, hey, iReady is the solution, like I'm a pretty anti-technology in my house. And so it came up at conferences about like, oh, well, they just need to be logging on to do Zern and all these other things. And I just think there needs to be more options for parents besides just, hey, go put your kid on a computer, right? I mean, a lot of us had young children in the district last year have PTSD, like our kids do, from being on the computer all day long in elementary school. So it's kind of like not the first go-to. And so there should be other options available to point out resources, even for families that don't necessarily have all that access. And that part's not there. And that part wasn't at least part of our conversations at conferences, nor was it brought up about SBA scores at all.
I would just add that, and I think I heard Director Mullings say essentially the same thing, that there needs to be more of a menu of options, and it needs to have an individualized aspect to it. And I can't even remember which one of you now said that it's going to be critical, this relationship communication between the student, the family, the home. And I know we've drifted a little bit far afield here, but I think this is a great, just feels like a ed planning conversation to me, Rich. I don't know about you. And I'm sorry, but I'm gonna kind of shift a little bit to political advocacy here. We have been trying to help legislators understand the impacts of COVID don't just hit poor communities. I'm looking at a 16-point drop in math scores on my students. Try to tell me that the closure of our schools to in-person learning didn't have a negative impact on ISD students. My staff has already shared with me an incredibly robust summer school option that I believe many, many students need to take advantage of. It comes with a big price tag. It's exactly the kind of thing I would be using ESSER funds for recovery efforts on. So as we continue to have our conversations with legislators, to me, this is just another piece of data that, and I don't have any comparison data because it doesn't exist right now, but I don't need it because I'm just looking at my own students and comparing them to themselves. And I think one of the comments that I have shared previously is you're going to see data that doesn't look like the traditional Issaquah data that we've become used to. When students are dropping from the mid 70s to the mid 50s in terms of the percentages that are meeting standard, that's just not what we're not okay with that here. So the team is well aware of this, the idea that we have to provide a menu of options, the ways that we can support kids. And then the last thing I will say, and it goes a little bit to what you were saying, Director Weaver, this is going to be a process that's going to take time. We're not going to bring these kids back up overnight. We're going to work hard on it. They're going to work hard, but we can't just pound it into them in the next 6 months or anything like that. We have to have after school plans for now, ways to attack it in the classroom, as Rich was saying earlier, which is critical. Summer school options, ongoing support. And you can just see it. You can see it right here in the results. So, and again, I know that's a little bit far afield from the discussion around the upcoming monitor reports, but my point about this is the historical record of the impact. And when you look at data like this, you'd be hard pressed to argue that the denial of in-person learning didn't have a significant impact on our students.
Superintendent Thiele, I do feel I need to point out that I feel like this particular chart masks the ELA needs as well, because this SBA cut out the writing portions, and the writing portions are traditionally the place where we have the most challenges. We are hearing from our ELA teachers that they are noticing, and our SBA reading data notices some challenges, not quite as dramatic as in math, but definitely some challenges in reading too. And I point that out not to be negative, but to be real.
Yeah.
That our schools and our leadership are really trying to look at finding out what the impact was so that we can make adjustments. So you are going to hear schools this year talking a lot about the early literacy and reading and writing interventions as well, because we are equally concerned about how that impacts their access to all coursework if they don't have those reading and writing skills. So I just want you to know we're taking that part of it pretty much just as serious as the math challenge.
Okay, any other questions here? Is there any other parts of the report you wanted to point out?
I don't think there was anything specific to that. Obviously, there was a lot of things that needed to be updated in the report, and most of that has happened, but it is still a work in progress. I think mostly what we wanted to hear, was there anything specifically missing that the board might be looking for in this version of the report? As we will, after tonight, we will continue forward and get ready for the actual monitoring, where we'll have another opportunity to have a robust conversation about the academic impact of, I think this is really about the academic impact of what happened last year. And that's what we're monitoring, is last year.
Mhm.
Maybe it's just me. I can't get the link for way back on page 2 of the first part. We're page 3.
Section are you in?
Page 3, the non-grad report.
Oh,
I can't get
page
the
3.
2021 non-grad report link to open, but maybe that's just me.
It's not a live link.
Oh,
2020 and 2019 are links, but if you hover over 2021, it's.
Do we have the grad report for 2021? Okay.
This is another good reason why going through these in advance like this is good for us.
Oh, she pulled it up. I don't know if you can see this.
By the way, Rich, Ron forwarded off the primer.
That's
for us. Thank
2020.
you for putting
Yeah.
that together.
You're going to get an email from Diane. Your account hasn't been forwarding any emails since last Friday, apparently. There's a glitch in the system.
Oh, that's been so pleasant.
We didn't get all those emails you were talking about.
Oh, yeah.
So
I
you
know.
weren't losing your minds, no.
Oh,
It
okay.
was-
Well, then I'm glad Rich pointed this
There's
out.
a technological
because-
problem, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I only received it not because I'm in the school board group,
'Cause
but he
copied
had
you?
independently copied me.
Right.
So
Are we tracking how many parents percentage-wise are looking at these reports? Like, because we can track.
you mean through our analytics on our website?
No, the iReady reports. No, when they log on
Oh.
to Family Access and look on them, like, how the one where you have to like acknowledge that you've looked at your kid's report card?
Yeah, I
Are
don't,
we-
I don't know the answer to that
I
directly,
would just be
but I'll
curious
find
to
out.
know how many families have actually looked at these iReady reports.
I know there was communications that went out encouraging it, and I know we got some feedback that they were complicated, which is what I think a little bit even prompted Rich to kind of try to send an explanation as well. Do you know about that, Rich?
I don't know. I know that we also asked teachers to send in their classroom newsletter or an email to their parents directions for getting those. So we tried to hit it from the classroom level, building level, and district e-news level. I will say that the family reports will continue to be accessible, but part of the feedback we received from a variety of stakeholders is that a simpler way of communicating those scores would be better for the all, and then providing the opportunity to request the full family report as an option for those who want more information. So we're heading more that direction for January at this time. So based on feedback we've received.
Yeah, especially since in Family Access, they're not under test scores, which is where the people would generally think to look to see.
Yeah.
Say, hey, we're sending out these iReady test scores. They're not there.
Yeah, so we're gonna put the next time in test scores with a link, and then with a communication of to explain, and then letting parents know that if they want the original iReady family report, they may request it from their teacher. That's the current plan for the January distribution of results. Feels more familiar that way.
Okay. Are you good? Okay, then I have one. And I admit I was challenged this week to dig deep into these. So this one's more maybe for Andrea, if she's still here. It's on 2.4 related to the AP Science exams, the AP IB science exams, and I was just, scrolling through it and I got to find it again. It was on page 4 of of the part 2. Oh, no, I lost it again. There were no AP scores for computer science. I can't believe no one took it.
I think there's an answer to that question, Director Moore.
Andrea McCormick, Executive Director of High School. Sorry, I'm wearing my winter coat. It's a little cold in here. There are scores and students absolutely to take that test. Unfortunately, College Board is experiencing some of the web issues that are going around in our country. And it went down the same day we were finishing that report. And that was the only one. And the PSAT scores that we hadn't pulled from College Board's website for the ends monitoring. So we will be able to get that to you as soon as their website is working again.
Okay, thank you.
I had heard that about the PSATs. I hadn't heard it about the computer science, which is why I said we still have some updating
Right.
of data. to
Yeah,
do
and
on
I
the
expect that. It's just all the
PSAT.
rest
Yeah.
were there.
Yeah.
Because I was curious to see how, kids
Of course, it's
did.
the one that you really wanted
Well,
to
I
see,
did hone in
Director
on
Moore,
that
that they
one,
didn't
yeah.
have. Yeah.
Yeah. By and large, the scores held up.
Yeah, and
I-
the
and I-
tests were different too,
Yeah.
though. Again, the AP test, like, that's why so much of this data, I think, is kind of,
Yeah.
I wouldn't use it to compare to previous, is
Yeah.
I guess what I would say. Because I know they were trying some new ways of administering AP exams during the pandemic last year.
Okay. Harlan?
So the report that's E2 Part 2, 2.7,
Okay, wait.
which is the SBA math, and
2.7.
it breaks it down 10th grade math by race, just for this current administration. But it gives the breakdown by meeting standard for 3 cohorts of kids. Can we get the similar breakdown by race for those cohorts as well? Ideally, side by side. I really want to know if not only did the pandemic impact learning, but did it disproportionately impact learning in our district? Because those are pretty dramatic charts as well, when it's broken down by race. But I don't know if that's what our chart always looks like, because I don't recall seeing this chart broken down by race previously. It could just be. we
And
haven't
that's
seen
the
a chart in a while.
2.7 SBA math one, is that correct, Director Gallinger?
So am I to understand you would like 2018 and 2019 by race as well, so that you can have a comparison? Like that is easily accomplished.
I can't even find it, so. If the
2017 and 2018. right? I just want to make a note because when we circle back, I want to make sure we,
Yeah, the 17-18 and the 18-19
And
school year are on there just by the data. We can do that by race as well
Okay.
on those, on all of those,
okay,
side by side.
maybe that's,
good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich.
yeah. And I suppose, and I'll send this to myself. Like I said, I didn't end up having time by the time I got these to do a really deep dive. So I would encourage anybody else that reads through these in any more depth to shoot off any comments to Ron as far as something that you see that
Yep.
doesn't look right or doesn't feel right, or you would like something added to. So this isn't our only chance. If you look through these more deeply and you find something else, that's what I would do.
Absolutely, and don't hesitate to
Yeah.
copy Rich on that email if you send it to me as well. We come together through our ed planning and through individual conversations as we'll kind of clean these up,
Mhm.
try to bring them
Mhm.
together.
Right, because we'll bring these back.
They come back in January, one in the first meeting and
One in the
two,
second.
the part 2 in the
Okay.
second meeting in January.
Okay, so if there aren't any other comments, all right, then that's how we'll leave that one. If there's anything more anybody finds, go ahead and let Ron and Rich know.
Yeah, please do. More eyes makes it better for us too.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rich. All right, now we are on to our discussion about the student representatives to the board. We had tasked Sydney and Marnie to take a look at this and to come up with some ideas on what we could do going forward to change the engagement with our student representatives. And so I'll pass it on to either one of you to share with, and I know you sent out a proposal to us that we've had a chance to look at, but I'll let you guys walk us through where you are and where you're thinking we go next.
Let me just go through it. Awesome. So in the document that you received, it's really in two parts. One is if I did the narrative of the whole proposal, making all the selections possible. And then beneath that, it's some of the, I think, options we have to choose about how we want engagement to work. So they're all a bit mix and match if we think any individual one was not the right choice. But the ideas put together would be that we would update our approach for 22-23, create a student group that consists of 2 students from each of our high schools, 1 junior, 1 senior. We would allow an application open to the entire student body. I'm assuming that that would mean a sophomore and junior at the time of selection, and they would serve as junior and senior. That the local ASB would select 2 student representatives from the list of applicants. Students would form 2 teams with representation from each high school on each team and identify a need change opportunity that they would want to work to implement. Student teams would rotate participation at school board meetings, with each team giving updates on their projects, as well as the opportunity to still share public input during those sessions. And that we may want to include board and or admin support as required based on what they select. So that's like the summary. If I go through, we can kind of talk about each of these components one at a time and see if we feel comfortable with that. So first, it's how many students and from which of our schools. So what's in here is that it'd be 2 from each of our high schools. So a total of 8. How did that land? I figure it could be either 1 to 2. I don't think we'd want any more than that. 1 to 2. If we want to just do these one at a time, does that sound comfortable? And then I'll just go through them all. We talk age grade of the students. So I guess it could be any grade in the school. It could be this mix of juniors and seniors, which I put in the end, or just seniors. You figure the options for duration could be, different students come in at different times, different meetings like we have today, a quarterly commitment, a year-long commitment. I went with year-long. I think we've got a lot of choices for how we could select them. So they could be from our existing ASB electeds, I guess, unless existing ASBs, open to the student body and chosen by the ASB, or have the ASB shortlist and that we as a board could select. I thought it'd be cool if the ASBs do it since they represent the student body. And then meeting participation continues today. They come in, they give comments, this project-based forum or public input. And then a bit at the bottom was like, and then what's the get for the student? And I think it'd be good for us to clarify that. And with some ideas there, is it letters of recommendation, community service hours, exposure, like meetings with legislators, an example, and then potentially a small scholarship. So I will hold for discussion.
Suzanne.
I have so many opinions.
Oh dear.
I actually really like your proposal. The one, and I like the idea of having a junior and senior. I know in Riverview, which has been doing this for forever, they have a junior and senior. They actually have the kids on the board for 2 years. So the senior is always mentoring the junior, right? So you always have one kid that's been there for 2 years and one kid who hasn't. But obviously they only have one high school. So it's not necessarily the same thing. In terms of your assignment duration, I think it needs to be the year. I think anything less than that is not, they're not going to get the sense of what we do, and we're not going to get the benefit of them. The thing that kind of I'm not comfortable with yet is I definitely think it should be an open application. I don't want to limit the kids who can apply. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with having the ASB make the choice. Because I kind of, and I could be totally wrong on this, but I kind of feel like there is a group of kids out there who will think, well, I'm not one of the popular kids. I'm not one of the ASB kind of kids. They're never going to pick me. I won't apply. I don't know if that's true or not. I kind of feel that. I think, given what I want them to do, given that there's a year-long commitment, given that I really want them to engage with the work we do, and you suggested having them do some kind of project, which I think is great. There does need to be some benefit for them. And I don't know, I guess we can't really offer them course credit, but it does seem like there has to be, that they need to get something out of this. I don't know what that would be. So those are my opinions.
Harlan?
So I hear what you're saying about the access points for recruitment and sort of comfort level of people that may feel like, why bother applying because I'm not a perspective. At the same time, then what would, I guess, your alternative be? Because I don't want to be selecting for Skyline High School over the student body. And so I think that's, and I'm not sure it's realistic to say, okay, form this ad hoc committee in your school to do that. So we don't want it also to be an extra burden on staff. Like, say, okay, principal, you need to go for it. So I guess what my response would be, well, they are the elected representatives of their school. And now it can be incumbent on us to really focus on the recruitment part. But they could, so we could still do that to address your point of making sure we get a broad-based thing. And it could be like, hey, at lunch, we'll go with the high school and or sometimes have a Q&A or go to some club. I don't know how that works, but we could really inject ourselves into the recruitment part. I think the students need to be selecting their representatives. So I think, and I just don't know if I'm open to other alternatives for who would do that part. I don't want to be part of the selection process because I feel uncomfortable with that.
And of course, we'd have the opportunity to really be working with the ASBs to understand what we're really trying to get out of this and help them understand it's not just about picking somebody from ASB or that, or picking a popular kid. I mean, that how to approach selecting this person if that's where it ends up landing. So it's on us or the ASB directors to help really coach the kids on how this should work. Marnie?
Yeah, and that's kind of my sense is back to the ASBs, whether it be, I think I do want it open to the entire student body and it not just be selected from within the ASB. And maybe it's just something that they add to their voting when they're voting for their president and their vice president or whoever their class officers, that this could be another thing that the student body is voting for because
that's
we are all
different.
elected.
Oh, that's very different.
I would love for it to be the broader student body
Oh,
because we are all elected by the members of the community we serve and they're being somewhat elected to represent the student body. And
that's very different than having just the ASB because the way this is written, she was talking about ASB leadership versus the whole school. So, but this, okay, well, this would then have a student know that they would be putting themselves in the position of basically running for a school-wide position.
Yeah, I think
don't
I have
know.
even more issues with that.
Yeah.
Because
That's very intimidating.
well, no, I'm thinking of it more, yes, we're all elected by the community. And what does the community do to make that choice? Most of them read a 250-word blurb in the voter pamphlet. They don't really know who you are. One of the questions I was actually going to ask is, what's the application? Who develops the application? I would hope that we would develop the application. Because again, I have opinions. And I don't think I want to ask the entire student body to review those applications. That's really intimidating if the entire student body is going to read your application. So from that standpoint, and I kind of take Harlan's point of whether or not the board should be doing it. I hadn't actually thought until you started talking of the fact that it could even create a conflict of interest if somebody has a student at one of those schools. But Yeah, so maybe I am, I would rather the ASB do it than the entire student body do it.
Mhm. I'm there too.
And one
Oh,
suggestion I might
yeah.
have related to if that were the approach you took, I think one of the things that would be valuable is in the spring, as they are prepping for elections and all of that, to have one or two board members go and visit each of the leadership classes
Oh, absolutely.
and talk to them about, here's what we think we want, or here's what we're looking for, the characteristics. Because my concern about a school-wide vote, I don't know how to say this tactfully, but I don't know how many of the students even really know what happens
Oh,
up
yeah.
here. I'm just, I'm trying to remember where my mind was when I was 17 years old and the school board and stuff. And I know we have some amazing students that come in, but I think when you open it up to 2,000 students, it gets more complicated in that way.
Well, and one thing we could do is, as we figure out how to do this, is reach out to Riverview, because how did they promote and share what this opportunity is to the students so that the information really gets down to students? Because certainly one or two of us could go and present at an ASB. But we want it to go beyond that. But how do you do that, right? So that it goes to, potentially all students or many students learn about it. So Riverview must have sort of figured this one out, and so they might be a good resource.
Yeah,
Well, and I
I
would-
think the Riverview board does pick their students. I'm pretty sure
And that-
that the board does it.
Yeah, but still, they must have a way to promote it at the schools for kids to apply.
Yeah, that's two steps really.
Right.
How to promote it school-wide so they know
Right.
what it is. And then to the leadership class, if they're your selection
Right.
committee, prepping them preparing them to make that selection, I
Right,
guess.
so that they understand what this position really is, what the board's really looking for as
Right.
far as that engagement.
And I bet Riverview would be happy to share their application with us too. In
I
the
would-
interest of not reinventing the wheel.
I would encourage it to be, I like the concept of a project. I'm not sure how realistic early on that is, but maybe I don't have the vision for it. So I'm not opposed. But I'd like to see us break down the monitoring calendar. So rather than necessarily chunks of time, but so if we have 4 ends, that we could have each school and students in those schools be responsible for going to those meetings, and they can rotate over the course from year to year, and then break up the ELs. So we know that we have students here that they've reviewed them, and then they're here to participate in the conversation. And they can know far enough in advance for their school schedule to make that a priority. Because I don't think it even has to be necessarily every meeting, because I don't think that that's the point. The point is we want meaningful engagement. And if we even escalated from where we are today to them providing meaningful engagement in our standard monitoring calendar, I think they would, one, get a better sense of what we do from a governance style. And two, they would get to really see the depth by which we look at the student experience and the staff experience. And then we would get actually student perspective at the places of meeting that we really wanted. So I think trying to just cover every meeting, I think we're missing the point, and I think they're not getting the point. So I think if we really broke it down by our monitoring calendar, right, we have 16 ELs, we have 4 Ns. It breaks down nicely, at least for our 4 high schools, to divvy that up. So we get, because I think that should be the focus. It's like what we expect of you is we expect you to be meaningfully engaged in important parts of our meeting. And I'm not saying like hearing public input isn't important or any other than numerous parts. But I really think that that's the part at least that I would want to consistently hear from if I could choose, if I had to choose a limited time of our students, that's the part that I would love to hear, because we've heard some really meaningful input from students over the course of time on those. And I think we've also seen their surprise at, wow, I can't believe you guys are talking about that, or That's really cool that you guys look at that depth and tease the data out that much. So I think it's an opportunity in both ways.
Yeah, and you could maybe rotate it in such a way that one school would provide public input at a given meeting and a different school would participate in the monitoring. So you'd have two schools in play at every meeting. So they would be more engaged on an ongoing basis, because this idea of I come to a meeting every 3 months, they don't know what's going on. Now, of course, the eager overachievers would watch all of our meetings, but
Yeah, I like that a
That's-
lot. That way, that gets at
Mhm.
getting more of our schools involved in a way that would be, I think, productive.
Let me ask a question on that one, because the way you just phrased it was different than in my mind. I was bringing them together, at least in this project-based one, intentionally cross-school,
oh, I
to
see what
mix
you're
them
saying.
across school. So, which is just an idea. And what the way you just went back and forth, it would be staying within their school. And as school partners, I guess, focus on EL versus public input. So is there, I just want to bring that back up. Is that idea of cross-school pollination interesting or not?
Oh, it is
And would we want to hold on to it?
I sort of hadn't picked up on it. It is interesting.
I think it's interesting, but I think that more important, I would rather see the junior senior collaboration, and I would focus on that part first, because I think I think why Riverview is so successful is they're like now what, decade into having this mentorship relationship, and I would prefer to focus on that first, and I don't think asking them to do that and cross pollinate would be realistic. But just
But
my
I also
opinion.
think that might be something, because you're going to talk to the students about this in January, right? At the
Yes.
whatchamacallit meeting. And that,
Interdistrict council.
right, because I really want to hear their feedback on this. And, that would be a question to ask them of what do they think would be more valuable. I kind of think they're going to land with what Harlan just said,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure.
Right. Because the idea here is to kind of, we're still drafting up our idea of what we want it to be, but we want the students' input, right? Right. So we're not formalizing anything until after we hear from the students. Right. So
That's
you
right.
can take, you can take what we're saying and create your next level of your draft, but then take it to the students.
Let me just go back and do this again. So 2 per school felt good. I think we all felt like that was a positive. The junior senior combination seemed like that had support. A minimum of the year-long commitment. Oh, mic's not on, sorry. A minimum of the year-long commitment, or did we want it to be the 2-year, which I think I heard with this mentor mentee, 2-year? Okay.
I don't think it has to be. I mean, that's just what Riverview does. And we would need to talk to Riverview, like, do their kids get school credit for that or something? Because that's got to be a ton of work.
Right. And you can
Um,
also, that could be one of the things you can ask the students when you go to the interdistrict is.
But I
But
would
if-
say the other thing is if a junior does it and loves it, there's no reason that junior couldn't apply for it again his senior year.
But if we were to break it down just by monitoring calendar, it wouldn't be necessarily a ton of work. So
That's
asking
true.
for a 2-year commitment
Yeah.
Mhm.
would not necessarily be that much work.
No, I'm just saying that Riverview's system is a ton of work.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Right. Because it's 2 students that come to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna have to think about it differently because we have 4 high schools.
Right.
Right.
And
there's
eventually
8
have 5.
students.
It seemed like we like the open student body application with ASB selection.
Yeah, we did seem to come back around to that.
Yeah, I came
Yeah.
around.
Me too. I wasn't sure, but I
I'm
hear
putting little
Harlan's point.
stars down my page. And then I guess I put these 2 together. So engagement around the monitoring calendar, so dividing up the ELs and the Ns with the ability to rotate it and do EL update and public input.
Yeah, still
Okay.
having a student input.
Student input, yeah. student
Yeah.
input, student input. I'm gonna say with. Just making sure. Input.
And that student input, to the extent possible, should be not just the musings of that particular student, but thoughtful input, gleaned from his fellows.
Yes. His or her. Okay, so, oh, and then what about participation benefits is the last section. So did we want to explore, and maybe this is where we ask for Andrea's help. The things written down so far were letters of recommendation, community service hours, small board scholarship, exploration of credit.
Well, and this brings up something else that Anna and I chatted about a little bit because we spent a lot of time together this week, which is once we have this all put together, I think it deserves to live in policy. I think we ought to have a we have a GP around what the ledge rep does and what the president does. We should have a GP around what the student reps do, which led me to wonder, because I know it doesn't exist in board policy. Does it exist somewhere in district regulations about student reps and what they do and where they come from? Or do we just fly by the seat of our pants and do it?
I think we're a seat of the pant flying operation under that
It's probably
aspect.
going on for so long. that
Yeah,
I don't know if
Been here-
anybody knows how it got started.
yeah, it's been here for every board meeting since I've been here, so I know it's been around over 20 years. I know, Andrea, the question, in case you were wondering
I got it.
why your name came up back there, was
I stayed
around
to listen for this particular topic.
what would be the participation benefits? So if a student committed to this, and it's more of a commitment, obviously, than what historically our students have done. Sydney has, some options down there, like letters of recommendation, community service hours, the opportunity to meet with legislators, the governor and the like, as they have in the past. And she actually even noted small board scholarship. Thoughts about what might encourage a student to want to do something like this? And does that sound like the right thing? I don't know. Is that about capture your mind, what you were thinking there, Sydney?
Yeah, I think I can explore the credit piece. That's a little bit trickier in terms of like looking into course code options and stuff. So I can explore that and get back to you on that particular part. On everything else, I think it's honestly, all of those are great incentives for high school students. The only thing I would say to that is that I've heard you repeatedly talk about how you want someone who's interested in this work and wants to engage. And so sometimes some of those incentives get like the wrong student in terms of like wanting it to be a resume builder and things. And so just being cautious about it through the application process, about making too robust of incentives, that's what's driving the student rather than like genuine engagement with the process. So that would be my only thought about those things, but I think they're all great options. And then just one other tiny note, I asked Nirmala and she cannot pull, totally off topic, but she cannot pull whether how many families access their iReady scores. The way that we're the place that it's located in Skyward, she can't pull that data from Skyward. So sorry.
Thank you.
And before you go away, is there
Yep.
one of those potential incentives that felt like more than others, it would be incenting the wrong behavior?
Right, so
Um,
something that would
Was there-
incent but not drive them to do this just because of it.
I don't think so. I think, I think students are really good about who they ask for letters of recommendation. So I think that I don't think any one of those, I think maybe doing all of them might be just like a big package. So
Okay.
really like maybe narrowing it down would be helpful, but none of them are like red flags to me about drawing the wrong student.
Right, and I don't know that we were thinking of doing all of them, but doing something from
Yeah,
the list.
and I think
Okay.
it's just like students who run for ASB. I mean, honestly, you get a mixed bag of students who are doing it for a resume builder versus students who really invest in the work. It's always sort of just student dependent and how it all pans out.
Marnie?
I would say that I think if we were to have a dedicated group like this, that I would want them to be the ones that are engaging in Ledge Conference and the years that we go to annual conference, rather than kind of, we don't know who's going to show up. And sometimes there are kids that never come to our meetings, and so that we get something where we are all having a combined experience. So I think I'd like that to at least be one of the benefits, is that they're allowed to go to those two conferences.
Right.
As long as they're, like the Bellevue one, but not, I can't imagine taking 8 kids over to,
Right, and we may not be able to take 8 kids because like usually with
Right.
Ledge Conference, they limit
Right.
us to how many.
so it might
kids
just be
can
the
come,
seniors. would
But we
get-
can also add on to this, right, if we certainly can't take all of them, we can potentially go down other times to meet with our legislators
Right.
at the Capitol, and we could make it our own field trip with our students to engage with our legislators. So we could make that work to add that piece in.
Right.
Can I offer just 2 other pieces?
Yeah.
One is just a clarifying piece when you're talking about ASB students being the ones who help select the candidates. I just want to, it might be helpful for you all to identify what you mean by ASB students, because if you're talking about like the elected exec board and like class council members who are elected by their peers versus like the ASB class, like a lot of times people refer to ASB students in both of those ways. So whether you'd want all of the students in the ASB class who might just like represent an assembly committee versus the elected student body from the ASB group. So that just might be a helpful clarification between which students are selecting. And then the other one is just promoting this. It might be, I can help you connect if you wanted to promote it through like civics and government classes and things like that to just draw on a wider audience rather than just like ASB announcements and things like that to try to just make sure that all the students get their eyes on what you're looking for.
Right, so it would seem like we've probably been referring to the ASB exec board.
I think we have.
Yes,
I
that's
think
what I
that's what
was
we've
referring
been
to.
thinking, so we
Yeah.
should just change that terminology.
Yes.
That was helpful.
Thank you.
So we understand what we're saying. Okay,
I think that is enough to do a good rev.
right.
The big thing is reach out to Riverview and just get some more sense of how they're selecting their application. And then we'll have a conversation, which, Andrea, if you could please share that date and time again, that would be amazing. Is it
right
here?
before our next board meeting.
Yeah, I think it's like
It's like
4
4
o'clock before the
o'clock.
next board meeting,
Oh, it's,
Oh,
probably why I thought I'd be.
I think.
It's January 13th, which is before the next board meeting, and it's from 4 to 5 PM is when IDSC meets. And we do meet over Zoom. So I just need to send the Zoom link to the 2 of you, which it's Ann and Sydney, is that
No,
correct?
no.
Nope,
It's Marnie.
Marnie and just Marnie?
Sydney.
Marnie and
Marnie and
Sydney,
Sydney.
okay.
Yeah.
I will send you both the calendar invite with the Zoom link.
Right, so that is the day of our board meeting.
Yeah, and I'll probably just Zoom from,
You should be here.
somewhere here.
and
Zoom
Zoom
from
in the
here.
building,
Yeah.
because
we
then we'll
start at
go
5.
into our meeting at 5. Right.
The other district you might reach out to, and I need to go back to my notes, but I think it was Richland who presented at, and I want to say it was 2 years ago because I think it was at the remote conference. And that's what kind of got me excited about this because they have 3 high schools and they still have a robust student rep program, which got me to thinking, well, if they can do it with 3, why can't we do it with 4? So they would be another one that might be able to give us some useful feedback. Because I think particularly, I mean, we all have ideas about what we could ask on an application, but to get some ideas about what districts are already doing, I think would be helpful.
Okay, Riverview, all the R districts, is what
Yeah.
we're talking to. Riverview and Richland.
I think
Okay.
it was Richland. I can go back and check my notes.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
I think this is really good, though,
Mhm.
and I will be eager to hear what the students say. So
Right.
we should probably schedule a debrief at that meeting
Yeah,
as well.
we could do it at that meeting.
Agenda planning thing.
Yeah.
that I don't have to go to.
You're just so excited there, Marnie. Contain yourself.
You paid your dues. Thank you for your service.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, then, if you end up making a new draft of that with your edits and you want to send it to us as well, that's great. And then it'll be interesting to hear your feedback from our students.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much.
All right. So now we're on to legislative matters. Harlan, is there anything you want to share?
I think we can just provide the board an update between the last 2 meetings. I think we met with the 5th legislative district,
And that was you and Sydney. Okay.
Sydney. So I'll let Sydney go first, since it was her first legislative linkage, I think.
And was it all 3 of the 5th legislators? Okay.
It
thank you.
was. It was. I thought it was a really good meeting. It was my first. meeting of that sort. So I was excited, seeing as how I live in the Fifth. I thought that was good. I think Harlan did a very nice job of putting together, I think it was 3 total topics off the top of my head that were pretty complicated actually to go through and to go through them quickly and land the message of the clarity on the position we are in financially, the impacts of decisions that have been made both at the federal and statewide level, and some of the negative connotations that have happened for our district. And I think it was super positive to hear the acknowledgement of that from our legislators and really to get into some of their thinking about how to best go forward. So I thought it was a very productive discussion.
Thank you to our superintendent and for Martin Turney for participating in another one. So I think.
I don't know if you're aware, but Representative Callan from the 5th has already pre-filed. She is the co-sponsor on an enrollment hold harmless bill, which was a big topic of our conversation with both the 41st and the 5th. So I think our message is really, it's getting through, and it's actually already taken the form of a piece of legislation. So thank you for all those efforts and for all the work you do to get these things set up, Harlan, because I know it's not easy. You're herding cats a little bit with those folks, but and to Martin as well for, bringing that financial voice to the conversations. So
Yes.
I felt really good about the meetings we've held.
Yeah, I think we're working really hard, and I hope the community understands, in spite of all the challenges, we're doing everything we can to advocate for our students and our families and our staff.
Yes.
So they can really understand the position we're in. And while I might not have taken a popular vote tonight, it doesn't change my, how hard I'm fighting for the district and our community.
Absolutely. I've witnessed it firsthand.
All right. All right. That's good. Thank you very much. I'm glad you guys were able to meet with the 5th. All right. We are on works in progress.
Yeah. So I've got a few things that I wanted to share tonight. And the first one, I just wanted to share kind of on a related topic, how I've been able to collaborate with superintendents from around our region, but particularly in East King County, around engaging with conversations with public health, both at the Washington State Department of Public Health, excuse me, and the Seattle King County Department of Public Health. I do need to just pause here for a moment and say that the most recent work and work product of East King County superintendents came out of a conversation from our collaboration with our local school directors, who invited us, the superintendents, to join them. And I know that Director Gallinger and Director Moraldo had a big role in getting those conversations started during the pandemic. They've continued forward. And we didn't intend to co-opt the meeting last Friday or anything like that, but we as superintendents were all in the same place at the same time with some of our school board directors and hatched a plan to do something. That something was a letter to, and we had spoken with Sarah Riegel from Seattle King County Public Health, and she suggested that we do that. And it's really, we just want them to take a closer look at some of the COVID mitigation requirements, and really looking, and we offered ourselves up as East King County because we have some of the highest vaccination rates and some of the lowest COVID rates anywhere. And so we think we would be a good case study in, can we suspend some of the real burden on us right now is contact tracing, and it's really drawing our educational resources away and into public health work. And I should say, the first choice we would all have would be to have a public health official as a COVID supervisor, contact tracer, COVID test administrator in all of our schools. Obviously, that's not very realistic because that would require hundreds and hundreds of staff members that I don't know they would have any capacity to hire and all of that. But that would be the ideal situation. But recognizing that can't happen, We're just asking for the consideration and the conversation around what if we suspended, for example, contact tracing, and we monitored our data carefully, because we don't ever want to be responsible for COVID spread in our communities. But I would argue we've demonstrated time and time again, week after week, we're not that. That's not happening as a result of us. And so while we're very appreciative of the partnership with public health, you know, they have the burden of workload as well. But, you know, I just think if we can continue to demonstrate incredibly low COVID numbers in our community, thank you, community, again, profusely for getting vaccinated and not sending your children to school if they're not feeling well, and getting them tested and taking advantage of the symptomatic testing or the test to stay options. We're proving that it can work. And so now we're asking 70 days into the school year and proving that we can do this. Would you start to look differently at some of the mitigation efforts so that we could kind of loosen up, if you will, on some of that, and get our educators back focusing on the education mission? Now, we recognize our number one priority is keeping our schools open. And we know in order to do that, we have to keep our COVID rates low. We've got to stop spread. And I know that even for some, me even talking about this may make them nervous, but we're not going to do anything foolhardily. We'll always work in conjunction with public health. We recognize their expertise in this area, but we have experiences now and data that we can bring to the table in the conversation as well. So I have to say, again, thank you to Directors Meraldo and to Director Gallinger, because you set these meetings up and they've really lended. And I know you presented on it at the WASDA conference. So I think people should really take notice that it is a powerful step that, you know, there's strength in numbers, I guess, is the old saying. And East King County is a big part of King County. And sometimes we feel like there's no acknowledgement that there's a differentiation from region to region. And anyway, so we're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to fight for our employees so that we can free up all of those contact tracing obligations and all of those mitigations out there so we can get focused on our education mission. But we will not take lightly the role of mitigating COVID in our schools. We know how important that is. So just wanted to say that. Also, just a quick update. It was referenced earlier in the meeting. We have begun our levy committee work. Our first meeting, I thought went quite well. I'm so appreciative of all of those community members and staff who are giving a lot of their time and energy to this important work. It was great to see a lot of new faces on the committee this go around, and certainly a few returning committee members from previous committees as well. I felt that, again, they got off to a good start, lots of learning about public school funding and lots of good questions. It is a bit of a complicated web of funding in Washington State. Lots of appreciation to our technical team who's been working hard to prepare, and Dr. Almy and Executive Director Turney, who are leading the committee, and the support folks. They worked really hard to get the committee work done and get it up so that we would have our springboards and the process ready to move forward to educate the committee. And I'm looking forward. Our next meeting is next Tuesday, December 14th. And it's a big lift. You know, we have a tight timeline. I know we solidified it earlier in this meeting tonight. And so I just have a lot of appreciation for that team. And a lot of learning is happening out there for folks. So I'm looking forward to that. A couple of fun things that I got to do this past week. We had our first in-person voice mentor reception. We haven't held one of those in nearly 2 years. That was on Monday. And our ISD voice program coordinators held it. It was wonderful to see a fairly large group of voice mentors right here in this room. We had people from our senior community. We had students who are voice mentors. They heard a compelling story from one of our own ISD counselors about his lived experience and the role that mentors could play for him. It really is just such a wonderful program. We're so happy that our mentors are back meeting with their mentees. The need is higher than ever, and we're just have a lot of gratitude for those folks. And I want to encourage anyone out there who's listening to this and wondering, well, what is a voice mentor? Please go to our website and look it up. We can always use more voice mentors. We have lots of students out there that need mentors and appreciate mentors. And so it was just wonderful to be in the room with them all. I really enjoyed it. And then the other thing that I got to do that was really a lot of fun was I had the pleasure of spending an hour or so, and I think I went a little long, shocker there that I would go long when on an interview with the editorial board of the Patriot Press out at Liberty High School and their teacher, wonderful teacher, Chris Daughter. The class, it was a lot of fun, probably more fun for me than it was for the students, but they had great questions for me about being a superintendent, what it is, what I like, what I struggled with, what am I going to do when I retire, things like that. And so I'm looking forward to reading the article when it comes out. And again, just big thanks to Ms. Daughters and the wonderful students in the class. We had a really good time, and it's always a reminder to me why we do this when I get to go out there and hang out with our teachers and our students, any grade level, any school, it doesn't matter. It's just a lot of fun. So those were some fun things that I got to do while we were doing levy work and looking at math scores and things like that this week. So that's all I had to share. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will add to your fun things to do that Suzanne and I had the opportunity to go out and tour and visit Cougar Mountain Middle School at Ringdale. And
Yes.
so we met with, Jason was out there with us, and Erin McKee took us around and showed us her school and took us into classrooms. With Suzanne and I both figured out we can still do middle school math. The social studies wasn't looking too good. And the English language arts we probably could have done as well. So it was really nice to be in a place where there were students and they were all engaged and heading to class, and the work that was being done in the classroom was excellent as far as engaging the students and giving them choice on what they work on now and what they have for later, and just spelling these things out, especially for middle school kids, on how to make good choices on how to use your time. So that was very interesting and fun. And Jason said, for anybody that's interested in visiting for him, particularly the middle schools, to let him know, and he'd be happy to help arrange anything like that. Side little note there. Yeah, it was very good. All right, so now we're on to announcements and correspondence. The one question I have for Diane is I saw that you forwarded on the emails that had gotten stuck. Where they were just stuck, right? They've still been acknowledged with their. Okay, good. So in your emails are a couple packets with additional emails that we hadn't seen over the last so many days. So thank you. Okay, Friday. And then does anybody have any announcements or correspondence they want to add? Suzanne.
Well, obviously, I had a number of emails back and forth with all of the search firms that we mentioned. And I also had an email exchange with the president of the Tahoma School Board.
Okay. All right. If no one else has anything, then we'll go on to calendar and future agenda topics. I know Diane sent out in our update from the meeting and mentioned the listening sessions and the levy committee meetings. Those are just, well, the listening sessions we all have to go to. The levy meetings are just for your information. She didn't mention anything that we need to calendar. And so I would ask, is there any time next week that this group of 5 could possibly be together so that we could tentatively schedule a meeting that would allow us to meet with the search firm to have a kickoff as far as our process and timeline moving forward. And so I will throw that out. I know Suzanne had some specific dates.
Well, I'm going to be a problem on this one because I am out of town every day except Monday. Now, I probably can participate remotely on one or two of those other days, but I'm also going to be in a car traveling from Chicago to Cleveland, and I can't vouch for the internet in Indiana. So that's probably not a good plan. Monday would be awesome. And again, this is tentative because we don't know if the search
We-
firm can meet with us.
Right, we don't.
But Monday would be awesome. I could
And Monday,
probably
you're
make
talking the 13th.
13th. I could probably make Wednesday work. After that, I get into like the 22nd, which is perilously close to Christmas, but I can do it.
Monday's the only day that I could do it.
The 13th?
It's the only day you can or can't.
Can.
Oh,
Can anybody
What time
else?
of- What time of day or it doesn't matter for you? Do you need how long?
I guess I would go, well, the one thing I would wonder about is if we gave it a time block to give them some flexibility, because we still have to work this out with them, but. So I would say like no more than an hour to 2.
that's kind
hour?
of what's in my head too, would be 1 to 2 hours.
Do you really think that you can turn a contract around in 24 hours? I just don't see that happening.
Likely not, but what I was thinking was not having fully executed the contract doesn't necessarily preclude you from talking to them, but I mean, that's going to be a challenge. I mean, we're going to have to reach out to them first thing tomorrow morning and see how, I mean, they might be able to get it over here pretty quickly. So it's possible, I guess. But we're definitely going to want to have somebody read through the contract.
Of course.
But
Like 3:30 to 5.
Yeah, I could do that.
You can't do later. I'm just curious.
No, I could do later. I'm saying
Oh.
after 3:30.
Okay,
Oh, well, that's pretty good chunk of time.
okay. And Marnie?
Right,
Yeah,
let's
as
start at
long
5.
as-
Like, yeah.
Oh, starting at 5 is even better. Okay,
I could do that.
okay. So help us out on if we scheduled, if we made a motion now and scheduled a meeting for Monday, the 13th at 5 o'clock. And then we figure out we can't do it. I mean, we can't put all the pieces together in time.
yeah,
We
or
can
the
just
or the
cancel.
firm's not available.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know that. We have not communicated since we just interviewed them, anything about this, but we thought since the 5 of us were
They were
together, if we
probably
had
watching
the
the meeting.
opportunity, we could try to figure it out.
Yeah.
We can just cancel
You can
it.
cancel a meeting. So you could meet, I mean, you could take
Schedule-
action to
Announce.
schedule it. And then, I mean, if it has to be canceled, you just cancel it.
Right, and then if we decide that this was our only opportunity, let's say in December, and I go forward trying to find a date like the first week of January, we could just declare it, because we don't have board action, we could just declare a special meeting, an emergency meeting.
Yeah, I even have a question
Oh,
of,
okay.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
believe this could be an executive session. I
No, I don't.
No,
think
think
we
it
were
would have to
thinking it
be
was
a
public.
open public
It
meeting.
would be.
Yeah.
public.
Yes, we were thinking that.
Yeah. So,
And I want to be clear, I
Yeah.
have other availability in December. I'm just out of town from the 14th to the 21st. But I know the closer it gets to the
Right.
25th and between Christmas and New Year's, that's probably not real popular for a lot of people.
Right. And so the 13th after 5 PM is one thing we've just said. And if I asked you about the week of January 3rd, Monday, the 3rd,
I am again, oh no,
Monday the 3rd would be great.
yeah, I'm out of town the latter part of that week, but I could be remote because that's not like, I'm not
well,
going to
but
be in
they're
a wedding
coming
or a
back with the
car.
3rd,
I can do the 3rd.
Marnie.
Mhm.
And when we say we can do the 3rd, are we talking anytime? Okay,
I would say for me, anytime after 10:30.
okay. And, but this was my question back to you. If we calendar the first one, oh, I guess we could calendar. See, I won't be able to have another board meeting to off, to vote on,
Calendar too?
yeah,
That's true.
yeah. So who was saying something about time? Sorry.
The third would have to be after 10:30.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh-huh,
Okay.
that
It's
works.
not a school day, right? I just want to verify.
Oh, wait, the third's not a school day? Oh, I don't know that.
I have,
It shouldn't be.
we don't have kids in school. We don't know these things.
Sorry. Ron, do you know is the third a school day? Which one is?
on the calendar.
It's a Monday, so it shouldn't be. It should be the observed.
Oh, because it would be New Year's
Oh, but,
observed.
oh, right, because it wouldn't be observed on the 31st with the, we went through this
Oh.
before and I got very confused.
I think I have it as a school day.
Yeah, because the New Year's is on the 1st, so isn't the observed on the 31st?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't know.
yeah, I think the first,
Do we go to school on the third?
yeah. I think
Who knows?
My calendar doesn't say that it's not a school day.
We used to have a calendar.
Does it matter?
Where am I missing it? Schools, just past this.
It actually says the day
Oh,
off for New Year's
thank
is
you.
the 31st.
Yeah, no, the third is a school day.
Okay. So does that matter to anybody? Doesn't matter.
Because it's not a school day for you.
I know. I'm here.
I can do it. So that's an option. And but at that point, the contract would be executed.
Right. So then the suggestion is, what if we just calendar 2 meetings
And cancel one?
and cancel one or both if that's the unfortunate, but the third you will for certain we'd have things organized by the 3rd. That sound okay, you
Okay.
guys? Okay, so we need a motion to do that. Wait,
How do you?
wait, Harlan's asking. a
Oh, I'm sorry.
question.
I mean, you might not cancel it. I mean, that may be a time that you do a couple.
Well, that could be 2.
focus
You're right.
groups, Right, so.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying if we schedule the 13th and the contract's not executed and they don't want to do anything until the contract's executed, we don't really want to meet on the 13th. Do we?
No, I know, I'm just saying, but if ideally you can pull this off and we could meet with them on the 13th,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
it would
You-
be a good time to be able to say, like,
Sure.
people will be coming back fresh from break and ready to, I think, engage in the process. So
Okay.
it might be a good opportunity before the rat race of school starts again to get that first Monday.
To meet with the board, you mean, or,
To do, yeah, the
Whatever
next
the
step of
next
focus
step.
groups. The idea.
Some type of outreach.
right, but it
or
wouldn't
engagement.
require us to be involved, necessarily be involved.
I,
I think I was just saying, if we have them both, we could potentially use it if needed.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
My only question, as far as making a motion is if we're saying January 3rd, anytime after 10:30, that's not actually a time. Or can I
No.
schedule it time to be determined?
Yeah.
Can I do that?
But
Good.
we're all putting it on our calendars
Wide open.
to hold it.
You want to say 11? Okay. All right. I move that we schedule 2 special board meetings, one on December 13th at 5 PM and one on January 3rd at tentatively 11 AM, time to be determined.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to have 2 special board meetings. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, approved. All right, so we've got those. We will do what we can to get this all figured out as quickly as possible to let you know how this works out for those dates. Yeah?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm talking to myself.
All right,
yeah, it would be ideal if we can pull off next Monday.
I know.
That would be great.
It's,
Yeah,
It's
that
tough.
one's iffy.
it is iffy, but you know what? If we don't schedule it now, we're not going to be able to have any chance at having it. All right. I think that's everything, unless anybody else has anything to bring up. Uh-oh. Yes, no. You're reaching for your button.
I'm turning it off.
No, Harlan,